which was smoking heavily. Oh dear. So we actually had the fire department come in here, and Brian and I were at a meeting. We were over
The Jenks.
to the Jenks, so we just got done and moved back here, so.
And the fire department says it's safe in here, by the way.
Yes.
Just so, yeah.
We were all hoping we could go home early,
Smoky.
but yeah, it is a little smoky, so, so apologize for the late start, so,
No, we're not that late.
yeah.
A few minutes.
Okay, so,
But here we are.
here we are, at 7. Chair has opened the meeting. We are now open. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Hi, Winchester. And so I'm going to turn it over to the planner for your updates, if you have any in particular.
No, I think we can move forward with this, with our agenda.
Right, and we have one subcommittee update that's actually going to be a presentation on accessory dwelling units later on. So why don't we move directly to our first substantive item, which is a presentation from Craig Miller on the 22 Highland Avenue and adjacent properties subdivision. So this is a presentation. This is not a formal hearing. So, Mr. Miller, would you please come to the table? We have allotted an hour for this, and if there is time left over, we might get a few comments from the audience. But like I said, there's going to be several other actual hearings coming after this, so let's keep all of our comments, if we get a chance to get public input, until later. So, Mr. Miller, you have the floor.
Should I talk to a plan? Do you have anything on?
It's kind of, well, here, it's up here if you'd like it.
Okay.
But I think everyone is very,
We have them in
Familiar.
hand, we have them on paper.
Okay, so
just
you've
for
seen
our
them and-
purpose, For the viewing audience, I guess
Yeah, I
that
think it
might
would
be
be good
nice.
if we could get them up.
it should be right there.
And I just sort of got the concept of, we've got an hour, but I definitely have questions, so I want to make sure.
Oh, yeah, the whole thing is, yeah, I'm sorry, the entire block of time is an hour, so how long do you think Mr. Miller would be able to do it in?
5-10 minutes, I can go through the general overview and then,
Why don't we do, let's give you 10 minutes, and if you need a little more, that's fine. And then,
Got it.
and we've got a timekeeper.
Go for it.
So,
okay,
start.
great. Well, thank you very much. My name's Craig Miller. I'm manager of 5 Points Development, also principal of Waterfield Design Group. We're here to talk about land off of Highland Avenue. Involves a potential land swap with the town of Winchester. So this is land that I have under control here off of Highland Avenue, abutting Dana, as I follow the cursor. And these are the little wings that we've been talking with the town about potentially swapping in order to make this a more attractive direction than the a 40B project that I had proposed.
Could I just ask you to, if you could click on the thing to expand it to full screen, so that
This guy? Okay.
a little bigger, thank you.
So this is Highland Avenue, and here's Dana, and this is just a plan of existing conditions with an outline of the total parcel that would be involved. This land would be given to the town, and I would take this piece, and I would build a road that I'll show you on a subsequent plan, and I would demolish the existing home at 22 Highland. And then we would work cooperatively together with the town on drainage improvements and access and all the rest to make this work for both parties. This is a layout of potential lots. Not as easy to follow, but contains all the mathematics in order to define the 5 different lots that are proposed as part of my project. This shows the right-of-way for the proposed road that ends in a hammerhead cul-de-sac of sorts, a termination point, providing the frontage needed for these lots to exist. Okay. This is just demolition plan. I've gotten some comments from the engineering department that we need to make some tweaks to this, which we will. We don't plan to clear and grub the entire area. That's a typo on our part. We label it as such, but it's just the opposite. We want to leave as many trees as possible. So here's a plan of lots with a road on it. So the prior plan I just showed had an outline showing the right-of-way, which is this kind of dashed line here, and in the middle of that is a proposed paved road. I'm also showing the setbacks required for each of the proposed lots in a light dashed line, and I'm showing a potential home location, even though I acknowledge that the location of a proposed house is not necessarily the purview of this sort of review and approval process at the planning board level. It's a valuable exercise to go through, so I've taken the time to show what a potential house would look like and where I would like to site it as a way to help with the overall completion of a project that works for the neighborhood. To the point I'm trying to make, I've skewed the locations of the proposed homes forward in the lots to maximize the size of the backyards so as to provide as much separation between the homes that exist on Dana Avenue and the new homes that would be built on this road. In some cases, I'm exceeding the front yard setback by quite a bit. I need to leave something there so that at least it looks like a neighborhood. In some cases, we're not exceeding it very much, but we're doing the best we can given the constraints that exist at each lot. This is the unique lot that we'll discuss later that has an issue with the lot width. But right now, the frontage works for this, and the area and the size. Lot width is a challenge that we can work on. So this plan shows proposed stormwater runoff treatment, or the infiltration of proposed runoff. So we are creating a new impervious surface here with this proposed paved road. We're creating new impervious surfaces with each one of these rooftops. And per the bylaw, we need to infiltrate all the new runoff that's created. And we're showing these as underground infiltration chambers. We've got test pit data, and that's how we designed our stormwater report. We've also hired McPhail Associates, which is a well-regarded geotechnical engineer, and they've gone out on July 2nd and supplemented our test pit locations. I'll go back to this plan. This was our original test pits where we got subsurface soil information from. We've now added 4 or 5 boring locations to this plan. I haven't shown them on the plan yet, but we're still in the process of getting the geotechnical report from McPhail. But their results were positive, which is why we felt confident enough to submit the plans as we did. Our drainage works, and the McPhail field work showed that it's better than we had thought. So we feel confident that these drainage chambers will prove themselves out when we submit the McPhail data. Nevertheless, these drainage chambers are accepting the runoff from both the streets and the homes. As an example, there's a drainage line leading from the roof of this house into that chamber, so this is roof runoff only. Some of these are both roof runoff and roadway runoff, and the reason we're doing that and combining the two and not keeping them separate is that we want to minimize the amount of land that we have to disturb. Every time I put a footprint down to build something, I'm taking trees down too, and so I'm trying to avoid that. I can separate the chambers and provide additional chambers to segregate roof runoff from roadway, but we're going to have a homeowners association here anyways to take care of maintenance. To me, it's a maintenance issue that the homeowners association would take care of, but there are trade-offs. If the board prefers that I separate, we could do that. But that's the purpose of this sketch, to show runoff and stormwater infiltration. Catch basin locations where the roadway is located. We got a comment from the engineering department. We need to increase the cross slope on our roadway, which we can do to make sure that we capture all the runoff. We'll do that. This is a proposed grading plan. We show the roadway in its proposed slope. It's a 10% slope. I forget for how long, but it's contained in my narrative. We're looking for relief on this because the town's requirement is 8% for a distance of, 300 feet or 350 feet, and we're at 10% for 200 some odd feet. So we're looking for relief on the slope of this road. You may recall back 2.5 years ago, we had an S-shaped road that met the requirements of the town slope, but that ate up an awful lot of land. So we feel like coming back with this hammerhead road that we were in a pretty good place to ask for relief on that because it was a better direction than the S-curve road that consumed, twice as much land for the road and put the houses, put a road closer to the Dana Avenue houses. So that's an area of relief. We're also showing an easement, a construction easement that we would request from the town to perform the grading for this road. This is also different than our plan from 2015. In 2015, we had proposed a through road all the way up to North Border, and at that time, we had offset the location of the road within the right-of-way. So the town requirements call for any paved surface to be centered within the right-of-way that's created for the road. Back in 2015, we proposed offsetting that paved area towards the new houses so that we wouldn't have to grade as much on this town property. Here, we're centering it, and that's a topic of discussion that we can have with the town. If you prefer that we offset it and minimize grading on town property, we could do that. But that's why there's an easement requested or being shown here on this side slope area. I also note on this plan, I'm getting into the weeds a little bit, but this is a regrading area that would accept runoff from the culvert that we would need to coordinate with the town and VHB and their eventual design of drainage improvements for which we are agreeing to participate in as part of this project. The town is going to design those improvements. This is a indication that we're looking to accommodate the runoff that may come from the surcharging of the culvert, even after the culvert is widened or enhanced with a second pipeline. And that allows this Lot 1 to not flood the way it does today. The grading of this road to meet the rest of the grades on the property allows us to create a little dam of sorts right here. So today, water from this area hits the 22 Highland Avenue house and flows across the corner of this lot as it makes its way in a beeline fashion to the Highland Avenue gutter. What we're proposing to do is stop that from happening, prevent this lot from flooding, enhance and provide additional protection to the neighbor here at the corner of Dana, and then as we dam that area with the roadway, we provide an outlet through and under the roadway to a catch basin that's underground that puts the water into the system that's already there. So instead of allowing it to be overland and flooding the street, we're putting it in the ground. And we have yet to review that with the town. So this is just us being a little ahead of things because we're ahead and the town has yet to get to the point where they would be designing this. But when the time comes for VHB to be engaged with the town, we'll talk to them about this, and if they have better ideas, we're more than willing to work with them on how that would work. 2 more minutes. Drainage. So what's this plan? This is just showing the different setbacks and so forth, which I've already covered. I'm going backwards, that's why. This looks funny to me. Okay, landscaping plan. So we're proposing new trees, some trees in here to buffer the impact on neighbors. We've got a short retaining wall here to make this lot a little bit flatter and taller, landscaping along here. One of Beth's comments was a good one, that is to coordinate these locations of these trees and some of the other trees with drainage. That's something that we need to do, and so we may adjust the locations of these trees going forward, but the intent is to provide landscaping as much as we can to enhance the disturbed area. And then go forward, please. Okay, so this is profile, plan and profile. So drainage, roadway profile, slopes, and the like. So that would probably be a good place to end and open up for questions.
Okay, so, thank you. That was short and to the point. Why don't we go around the board? Maureen, you...
So I spent some time with this. I will just throw these things out. Obviously, I'm just teeing these up, but maybe some of you caught other things. These are what I caught, and they're not necessarily, some of them might be for discussion. Anyway, my personal bias is to keep the road width down, so that would be, I'm just getting out there, that's one that's been formally proposed to 18 feet width. I'm a big advocate of the narrower, the better. No sidewalks, absolutely, we don't need it on this site. Less paving, I think the better. So I do live on a street, actually Betsy does too, not to name you by name, but several of us have lived on streets without sidewalks when they're low traffic. We feel they're actually, people are walking in the street and that they can work. The homeowners association, eventually, I want to make sure, because we've really bollocksed this up in earlier years. In fact, we didn't even require, we had these developments with, they were subdivisions with our approval, and we didn't have the full structure in place for a homeowners association. It's now in our subdivision regs to require the homeowners association, especially to deal with these drainage projects, but I want to make sure it goes to council. I think we should be looking at the homeowners association docs and have council look at them before we release this thing or vote it entirely. So I want to make sure that the homeowners association proposal really works to address the drainage. And that you brought up an interesting question about what's best, because I live in a neighborhood where we are in a private way, and so I know what that's like in terms of trying to, we don't have any way to impose people contributing to rebuild our street, but that's exactly what we're expected to do. That's what the town expects with private ways. So until this, and I am guessing it won't be turned over to the town, the homeowners are really going to be in charge of that road as well as the drainage, so we've really got to watch out for that one. So let's see, and I would like council to at least get some kind of a doc, we have to look at it. So that would be another thought. I did look at the landscaping plan, that's C5. You're right, in fact, we've been thinking we'd like to, in our house, like to plant a new tree, and we have a well, and we're looking and thinking, I don't know, I don't want to get the roots in the middle of the well, and you don't want to get roots in the middle of the drainage, so appreciate all that coordinating that's got to be done. I guess engineering, you're up for doing that for us, so thank you. In addition to that, on the landscaping, this is a good example of where this really, these subdivision projects are now going to the design review committee, but when we had the last one, they didn't know why they were getting it. So they didn't, I guess they were thinking architecture, and they so rarely get subdivisions that they're going to need some advice as to what they should be picking up. So landscaping is one example. Road design is another. They should be looking just at the configuration. So, but landscaping for sure is well within their expertise is really the point. One thing I did pick up, I thought it was, so I was surprised that there are no evergreens on the buffering area, so I don't like a wall of, and I'm stating this right now and in public, I don't, nobody who really knows landscaping wants a whole row of arborvitae. Please do not do that, but at the same time, some scattered evergreens in the landscaping plan would be, actually throughout, would be attractive and fit the woodsy area, but especially where we have the neighbors on Dana. So I'm looking for some evergreens, not arborvitae hedges. Let's see. I was quite concerned, again, I would highlight this to the design review committee, if Brian, if you're the one to communicate, that there's a precast block retaining wall. It's page D2. These things can be pretty unattractive. And precast block, I see it's got a coping block. I don't know what that's made of. I assume it's also precast. So I'm not going to get into that now, but I'm going to highlight that those walls, I think of Woburn Four Corners, where there's that, do you remember when you're coming back toward Winchester? And there's that charming concrete block retaining wall where the car dealership is. I mean, it can get pretty, so.
That's Woburn Four Corners is the one that you like?
No.
Oh, you don't like it, so.
It's Exhibit A of what's concerning. And I have seen another project that this board approved years ago, and it also had one of these concrete block, it's called precast stone, but it's concrete block retaining walls. So I'm not going to get into the weeds right now, but we definitely want to know what the product is, have DRC look at it, and I am interested in the height. I guess I didn't get the 5-foot-inch batter, exposed height, I'm hunting, it's okay. I'm not going to deal with it now, or I don't think this board needs
we're not
to
there
right
yet.
now. We're not there yet, but after a certain height, we actually, even just in our zoning, I guess, I don't know if zoning counts anymore, but we do have an issue about just, well, that's more for special permits, but we are concerned about high retaining walls, so I won't put a number on it, I'm just going to highlight retaining walls. And then, let's see, D4, we've got, this one the board really has to think about, but I live on a narrow road, no sidewalks, and this does have your standard, absolutely beautiful, in most neighborhoods it works, the vertical granite curb. I would wonder about, there are two other options here. One would be an angled curb. There's a name for that, Beth, what's that called? Just, pardon?
Slope.
Just slope granite, so that's one option. Another one that we do have it in various parts of town, my street, but Myopia Hill also had it and they lost it. But they, just to have some kind of a gutter created out of Belgian block that just, goes, it drains, it's set, so it's usually just about that wide, but it allows for more drainage, more perking, and so that's a positive, and it does allow cars to actually pull over, even though with 18 we should be fine, but somebody, I guaranteed they'll have landscaping trucks in there, and once the landscapers are in there, and I don't criticize anybody or any landscaping firm, but you might feel that even on a quiet street like that you want the opportunity to pull over. So that would be another thought. And then the last thing is I noticed in your, I think it was more obvious, but I did miss it in here, in your narrative, that you didn't have anything about street lights. Despite the fact that I do agree, I don't like to illuminate the world, I would hope that somebody might actually want to walk down the road in the evening. So I wouldn't want to necessarily leave that to the homeowners to just try to light up their fronts with little, little mushroom lights. So those are my comments, but I think we collectively might want to return to all of them.
Okay. Betsy?
Yeah, well, thank you very much. Very good job.
Thank you.
No, really, you picked up on most of my comments as well. Because, of course, we're just getting started here, as you know.
Right,
So there's
right.
a lot of process yet to go along.
Absolutely.
Certainly, but, of course, my big thing, of course, is the trees, and I appreciate your commitment, to getting it good, but also having that arboreal mix is really, really important, because I think, for example, when you're driving around Hillcrest Parkway, as an example, just right in my neck of the woods, you get a wonderful view of really mixed foliage. And I think the more you can have more of that effect, so much the better.
Absolutely.
Yes, and I think that also becomes important, especially, if there are any potential, issues with light and just any sort of light pollution. I think you want to try and retain that while still being able to have enough light for safety. For example, if people are going out in the evening to walk dogs or whatever, you want to make sure that people can walk safely.
Sure. Thanks.
Okay, Brian. And I apologize, typically we lead with the town planner's comments, but...
Does not matter at all. Debating where to start. Only Beth, were you planning on giving comments, or you just gave your written comments to correct? Okay, so then
It's up to you guys.
I
so-
actually was hoping after we got done here, we could invite Beth up
Okay.
and talk about...
I was trying to determine how much I should say if you, okay, so I'll go. So the location of the curb cut and the road layout is in line with the discussions that we've had over the past several months.
Yep.
I thought 18 feet was appropriate, however, 20 feet is the fire lane.
I know, we were kind of stuck,
So,
so.
I mean,
We're,
the board has gone back and forth on this. I don't think it's settled yet, I think is the point. That's all I'm just going to say.
I'm
is that I
fine
don't-
with 18 if that's what you want.
And your right-of-way looked like it was 30 feet wide or 40, because it looked like there's two classifications of roads that we're talking about. It's the neighborhood or the residential,
Yep.
I believe. And this would be the smallest road, which I believe is neighborhood or...
Yeah.
Do you know the
I've got-
page in the zoning?
It's not in zoning, it's in
regs?
subdivision.
Yeah, no, I brought it,
Yeah, no,
I've
I don't know.
got a 30-foot right-of-way.
Yeah, but where are we? There's section and,
Actually, I don't have that right now in front of me. I can get that.
I'll pick it up.
But so, and then you have your proposal was an 18-foot, or really, I guess it's still up in the air, but 18 or 20 feet wide for paved surface with a 30-foot right-of-way.
Right.
In this location, I believe 30 is okay. Well, I will look into that.
Okay.
it's page 57.
And what is it for the smallest, I believe it's the most left, this is
Yeah,
the smallest road?
residential.
So residential road, there should be a,
7.6.1 if you're making.
yeah. And it is 30 feet, correct? The right-of-way, it's just right on the table there, yeah. Sorry,
Hang on, I'm going the wrong direction. It's been a while, 30 feet, yeah.
30 feet, okay.
So
So
we're okay
that
then?
is in line with,
Okay.
but yeah, I
It
still.
is 18 feet on the width.
Yeah, it says, I think it says max 18 feet,
Yeah,
which is
yeah,
kind of,
we voted
which is,
it.
but since that time, the fire.
No, that's absolutely, sorry, that's right.
No,
We absolutely decided on our own, as we are allowed with, and our attorney certainly approved it as well, so, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm fine with 18. if
No, I
that's-
know you are, but
Yeah, yeah.
this board was too. Fire departments and boards don't have the same authority.
Right, but what is the fire department's recommendation?
Oh, that was for wider.
who's
Or
having a
it's
party?
20
Who's having a
feet.
party?
It always is.
We are.
It's our authority, and these are our regs.
Okay.
Sorry, you missed
Get
the...
some of
No,
the
I'm
stuff
just
at the
waiting until the
stop.
person is,
The car outside, sorry. Okay, sorry, I couldn't deal for a second.
Hot times in Winchester.
Okay,
Rocking.
almost done. So, and you had mentioned this, and I wanted to just reiterate that, we're here to set up the lots and the roads, and that if there's any relief that's needed in terms of lot width or any setback, that is a risk that you would have to take with the zoning board when the time comes.
Yep.
So, what else? An easement that, there was talk of an easement potentially that extends from Lot 5 to North Border Road for a looped water main. Where is that's,
Yeah, we can do that. That's a valid comment that Beth had made, and
Right.
we should include it, and we will.
and is there any potential, once that easement is already there, is there, you have no intention of connecting any, the residents to the fells in any way? Or that's not,
Backyard.
That's
That's
okay.
private
It's all
backyard.
private Okay. This is a small one we can deal with later, having to do with the noise pollution impacts that will be created by development during construction. Just started talking about federal and state,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, with the state and federal noise quality, but we also have a construction bylaw, chapter 23, so you would have to also comply with that.
Yep,
And that's all I have for now.
okay. Thank you.
okay. Heather, you want to go next?
Okay. I won't repeat anything that I've already said that I agree with, but I was curious, since I haven't walked the site, if there are large trees that are existing there.
Yes, there are.
So will those be on a plan? Because right now, I didn't see them, and it just, I know you said you won't clear it, but that's what it says.
I know.
Does it
I have-
show like large trees that would be scattered.
I know that our survey, I believe, our our survey from years ago did locate large trees. It may not have shown up. It may not have shown up on this submittal, but I can get that to you.
That would just be on the existing conditions.
There's
Yeah.
a few
Yeah.
on the existing conditions, but only at the front of the property.
There's a lot more than that.
So there's obviously many more trees in there.
Yeah. Yep.
There's a
It
ton.
is.
Is there a, what, 24 inches and larger, or what's your?
Mature is usually somewhere between 6 and 10, but I know 6 is probably,
Six
that's
would be
that's gonna be a lot
tall.
of work, that's gonna be a lot, I mean, but certainly less than 24. Usually mature trees, according to our bylaw, is 6 inches and above.
Why don't I start by getting 12 and higher, and we'll see what that looks like, and if, because at a certain point,
I think that's fair to
I
begin.
think 12 and higher would
that work
give
for
us
now?
a better idea of
Because
what,
there's quite a few big ones,
yep,
and I'd say there's quite a few 12s too, so
yeah.
it should populate the plan pretty well.
Yeah,
Yeah, I just think we want to
That'd be
avoid
good to
it
know.
being.
Well, we wanna know what's leaving, right? Sure.
yeah.
That was one comment. The other is that, Brian, your comment about a path to the fells resonated with me, because I think if we were gonna move there and you're so close, like, it makes sense to think about that now as an amenity for the neighborhood, since you're putting in a new road and everything and changing the lots, and I think now is the time to do that, and it would make people wanna live there if they could have a little cut through there.
Yeah, so let's look at that for a second.
Especially given it's not a walkable, not especially walkable neighborhood, that would be something that people could walk to for recreation, like with their dogs or.
Can I make a comment on that?
Sorry. why don't we finish with the board's comments and we'll get back?
So I just would want to see in more detail, like, where that could happen, or why.
Yeah, I'm just, so this is town land this is land that I'm giving to the town for construction of an affordable, or two affordable homes, and they're gonna combine it with their land here. So this is all gonna be affordable housing, two homes. Whether it's a duplex or two singles, I don't know, but that's the intent here. So I could get to here, but then I don't control what happens after that. And then I know in my conversations with DCR over the years, they were never a big fan of adding activity to this gate.
That's true.
So if we make a connection and that somehow allows people to start parking down here and walking up this private road to get through, I suppose that's a little far-fetched, but
Well, it doesn't, I mean, it happens on North Border Road.
Yeah.
So people,
Oh, yeah, 'cause
people park on North Border Road and walk in. So I would imagine if it's happening there, it could happen.
probably want to encourage them to go the official park entrance and not try to go through the neighborhood. Yeah,
Where is the official park, the trail
right,
head there?
right here.
So yeah, North Border Road ends at a gate there.
And then that's where you walk in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you could just walk
Yeah,
to
'cause
North
that
Border
loops all-
Road,
because
you're
that
not
loops all
cutting in,
the way
you're
along.
using the official trailhead.
Because that loops right around
Yeah,
that
and-
portion of the reservoir over there.
It's a
Sounds
question,
like
it's
the
a
bigger
question for
issues to
DCR,
town.
it's a question for DCR
For the cut?
if it's actually going to North Border Road and where that location will be. So, I mean, we're gonna have to talk to DCR about an eventual driveway access permit, so we could work something up with that.
But we would have to do that in conjunction with your plans if we want to
Right.
have
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
throughway.
Not a big fan off the top of my head, it's not something that I think, so I'm just thinking ahead to the eventual owners of these two houses. And, you know, to Michael who lives back here, I just don't know if anybody really wants people walking alongside a small little path that is right in their backyard. It just seems a little,
If it were on the side of one house, I can imagine that you could somehow buffer it, but in between two homes, that's a little difficult.
it's harder that way.
Harder, and it's,
I mean, you could almost make the case that it belongs down here, but then that's down a hill and kind of back up a hill again and over and around, and it's,
Maybe the town, that's all town land, maybe you
I've
can't.
noticed that people make their own paths anyway.
Right.
They're that close, there's gonna be a spot that a
Well,
bunch of people with dogs end up
Well,
clearing.
those homeowners are certainly gonna
yeah.
walk
That's what I
there.
mean,
I mean-
and
So-
people who live there might.
They're gonna just
probably
walk
do it
anyway,
anyways,
yeah.
and that's kind of what I'm thinking, that this will self-regulate in it to some degree, because, you know, if you live in this house and you want to get over here, you kind of need to be nice to these two folks so that they don't mind it when occasionally you walk alongside their property line.
I'm just
So I
saying
think
now
it's,
is the time to think about that in advance and just plan
Exactly.
for it to happen in a safe, regulated way.
I mean, there is another alternative, which is that, then since that is conservation land that the town
Right,
owns, you can
right.
essentially, you
At
can
the
walk
end of
through
the
there
hammerhead, yeah.
to get there. It's just not a trail. It's a lot
Right,
more fun,
right,
but it's not
right.
a trail.
right. Yeah,
One thing is, for sure, nobody's trying to look for the straight path, where they're going for a walk, so
Yeah,
maybe that is
yeah.
something the town can
Put a trail-
develop, and maybe, well, we normally don't actually talk about Conservation Commission, we rarely communicate with them, but maybe
Perhaps
that's.
we should.
We
Well,
will
maybe
soon.
it-
We have a meeting with them.
That's why I said by coincidence, it's, we rarely have interaction, but this is one, so
And that-
maybe
that-
that's something. And of course, Brian sees Elaine, I hope, on a regular basis, so maybe you could ask and get, I think Heather's idea is valid, but.
yeah, I think
don't know
down
what we
here
can
it works a lot better when it's down here on the town, because it
Yes.
feels more like a nature walk
do.
instead
Well,
of
you're
a,
going to
Yeah.
the Hammerhead and just.
Yeah.
Okay.
okay?
That's it.
Okay, I had a couple of questions. One of them is, I'm just going to reiterate what Heather was saying about the trees.
Yep.
I realize that the places you put the buildings are essentially just for, so we know where buildings might be, but obviously, there are, at least some of them look like they're taking out large trees at the moment, so it would be really nice to know which trees are going, especially along the property line with the Dana Street neighbors, because if there are mature trees over there, much better to save them than to take them down and replace them.
I completely agree.
I'm looking at C3, if you could move to C3. And I'm interested in understanding why you have built these catchment basements or underground storage systems so far to the east for these lots. So it looks, I'm just wondering, so obviously over here, you're going to have to disturb the land in order to put these in. And I'm trying to understand what the engineering requirements are that requires you to put them way over here instead of maybe enlarging these. And this is significantly upslope, so
Actually-
obviously you can't pump uphill, but
No,
it
no.
must be at the right level. But
Not by a lot. If you look at it's harder to understand on paper when you're reading contours, but this is the flattest portion of the property. It really levels out up here, so we're not swimming upstream when that line goes over to here. And I have to put a footprint of this size someplace, and I'd rather have this footprint as far away from the foundation of this house as possible so that the basement doesn't get water in it.
Yeah.
Because groundwater always follows the contour, or at least most of the time, groundwater follows the contour of the existing terrain. So in this case, the groundwater flow would have a tendency to be down the hill. If I put that chamber right on the heel of that home, it's going to throw water right at the basement, so I'm trying to avoid that. So the more separation I can get between the basement as possible. Now,
Okay, no, I mean,
having said that, I've got them as, in these areas, I do have them.
you do have them
I-
quite close.
These are deeper chambers, so they're going to try to miss the groundwater. Groundwater tends to go at a 45-degree angle through the soil, so we have this kind of angle of repose, they call it, that the groundwater follows. So we try to miss the bottom of the foundation. We're also going to put in it's plastic, but there's a more technical word for it, but there's a impermeable barrier that vertically stops the water and pushes it down so that it goes under. So
Okay.
these have those extra elements that allow it to be close.
Okay, and where is the catchment basement you mentioned you might put to catch the runoff going underneath the road here? Would that be,
Well, so the runoff that currently, now, the town through VHB is going to be designing an improvement to this area so that the flooding that occurs now, when the culvert surcharges and goes overland, would not occur going forward. This drainage line is being put here to capture any surface runoff that would continue after the town's improvements are made. And that's simply to guard against the fact that today, when the culvert surcharges, it crosses kitty corner this way. So we don't ever want to stop the water in a worst-case scenario, 500-year storm, something that's a bit bigger than the 100-year storm. We don't ever want to stop water from being able to get downhill. So that's what this is for, just in case.
right, I thought, and perhaps I misheard you,
Yeah.
that you were redirecting it using the construction of the road to come down
Yeah.
here, and that it was going underneath the road here.
No, it's right, well, I said both things, but I'll clarify. So the road is doing that. I am creating a bit of a dam here to stop that water from going across, and then I'm catching it right here in an open pipe
Okay.
that takes it to this drain manhole right here, which then drops it into the town.
Okay,
Drainage line.
okay.
The council.
So I completely misread this
That's
structure
right,
here.
yeah, that's right,
That's why I'm not an engineer.
yeah.
Okay.
That's the intent of that. But we still have a lot of coordination to do with the town as they ramp up and start doing their work. So we've kind of gotten ahead of ourselves on that.
Okay. So Beth, if you could come forward and maybe add any comments of yours, and I have a couple of questions of my own of you.
So we just completed our review.
Could you please
late-
identify yourself?
Beth Rudolph, Town Engineer.
Thank you.
The engineering department just completed our review late this afternoon, so I apologize that you all probably haven't seen our comments. I think Craig and Brian received them. I'm just going to hit the highlights. There's a more detailed letter, but number one, we recommend that the town, through the provisions of Chapter 53G, engage the services of VHB to do the peer review for this analysis, for this project. As Mr. Miller mentioned, the town is working with VHB on the flood improvements in this area, so it just makes sense to have them kind of look at everything holistically. I won't touch on things that other people have touched on. As Mr. Miller mentioned, the Lot 1 is one of the areas that has previously been in the sort of path of flood waters as they go, leave the channeled area and run overland. So we'll just need to coordinate with VHB to make sure that what we've shown here is sufficient and that we are able to protect the house at Lot 1, because that is, I think, of critical importance to everybody here. one of the concerns that hasn't been talked about yet is making sure that this road can be safely navigated by emergency vehicles. So there's a standard program called Auto Turn where it runs the fire truck through this. I think my concern is that the fire truck may not be able to negotiate that turning movement at the end of the hammerhead. So I think they would pull in forward in front of lot and then have to back up. And I'm worried that they won't be able to make that turn to get back out. And it's a very steep slope. It'd be one thing, in some places to help the curb or whatever, but in this case, it's a steep slope with a guardrail, so there's really no room for error there for them, so that needs to be provided. To Maureen, just commenting on Maureen's point about the sloped granite curb, I wouldn't have a problem with that on the northern side of development. On the southern side, I think we'd like to keep it the vertical granite because that's where the catch basins are, so you wouldn't want the drainage to, go down, miss the basins and go down the slope. We touched on the clearing and grubbing. Talked about the drain line, the water main loops, which Mr. Miller discussed, I think can be negotiated.
Yep.
Some sort of easement through the portion of as part of the land swap with the town.
Yep.
The grading outside of the right-of-way area in the town's property, that's something that'll have to be discussed as part of the negotiations for the land swap. Assuming that goes forward, that is a very steep area, and so we'll need to make sure that whatever we do in terms of for slope stabilization, we can do that appropriately so that we don't have erosion there. And I think that will be a concern for the Conservation Commission as well.
That's a 2.1 slope, and you had asked for 3.
Yeah, so I think the subdivision regs require nothing more than a 3-to-1 slope within the right-of-way.
Yeah.
So 2-to-1 is difficult, and will have to be well engineered. That's something we can probably work with VHB. If it can go to 3-to-1, I don't know if it can, but that's something we'll have to.
We could do 3-to-1, it just means the disturbance comes out to here
little
someplace.
further, yeah.
And then
So
we
again-
start bumping into the wetland buffer.
Yeah,
But a 2-to-1 is difficult to stabilize and do it well. I mean, it'll have to be engineered if that's what we're gonna do.
so this is showing a 2-to-1 right now?
Yeah.
It is, yeah.
And the other option, as I mentioned in my remarks earlier at the beginning, is to push, if we reduce the paved width to 18, and then we push that paved area to the far
Right,
uphill side of the page,
got that,
that gives us an extra 5 or 6 feet
right, that's useful.
right along the edge here, where we could transition down to the existing slope and maybe leave the existing slope alone. Because that's what we had proposed in our first go-around on
Makes
this.
sense.
So I'm
I
interested
think
in
that
trying
it
to,
would make sense to coordinate all of this with VHB because there's gonna be a limit of disturbance anyway for the new
Right.
culvert work, and so it may turn out that some of this is all kind of done in conjunction and integrated together, so.
and to that point too, as I suggest that, it ends up biting me in the tail over here because I'm scooching, that's not the technical term, but I'm pushing the houses towards the street. Now I'm gonna push the road towards the houses.
Right.
So it makes it feel even more,
My preference would be to
uncomfortable.
keep the road centered on the
Centered.
center line,
Right.
for a variety of reasons.
Right.
I think
Maybe
that
a
makes more
shallow, I mean, we're waiving all sorts of stuff for this project. Maybe the shallow setback makes sense though, because it's all green anyway. It's, they'll be looking out eventually, if not immediately, toward a tree and woodland area, so.
I agree.
Maureen, when you say shallow setback, could you,
Short front.
short a setback for the house?
Right.
Okay, right.
From the road.
But you see, look here, and I agree, Maureen, with what you're saying, because they are gonna have this great woods to look at, right? But taking the road from here, moving it another 5 feet to there, puts it right on the front doorstep.
What is that dimension, the shallowest or shortest, whatever?
I think you had the front setbacks in the 15.
I'm shorter than that. I'm trying to get a scale here, so that's, 2 hands is roughly 10 feet. Not scientific, but, so that's 5 feet. So that's 5 feet right there.
I mean, this is the struggle with these smaller, under the planning board's subdivision right definition of these smaller streets where we have just a 30-foot right-of-way. In typical street layouts, we have a 40-foot right-of-way.
But the
In most, everything
point is-
exists.
yeah, no.
Right, so I'm just saying there's not as much real estate to work
We
with
don't
this.
have
No.
that much leeway.
See, Maureen, there's your setbacks there, so
Yeah,
I'm showing
yeah.
12, and it's supposed to be 25.
So the other thing I just wanted to note, and I know this has been discussed a little bit, is the variances that will be required. So the setbacks are, what in that, is a preference, not necessarily a
that's right.
requirement.
Yep.
The lot width issue on lot 4
Right.
is another issue entirely to me. To
Yeah.
my feeling, that lot should be designed in compliance at this point. So I think that can be worked around. The setback issue is something, obviously that's a preference, so we
Right.
have less impact to the Dana Ave neighborhood, but the lot width, I think, is something that can be designed around at this point.
Well, I think it's easy to move it back even a little bit because.
Show us, Brian.
Yeah, I mean, because, so this is the required, what, is this
15, 15.
So even if this gets moved back, so you're not moving here, but even just a little bit further back, even by 4 or 5 feet,
Yeah,
the lot width is measured in the back of the house. So this is one of the few lot requirements that actually matters where the house is in terms of where it's measured. So the lot could be the same, but depending on where the house is, you could have a different lot. So I think you can work with this lot, move it very slightly, a few feet, less than 5 or 6 feet in any direction to make the lot width work. I don't think there's any. I think everyone on Dana Ave, and they'll hopefully have some time to talk tonight, would agree that try to get the houses closest to the new road as possible, as far away from the existing houses. I think if there's certainly enough consensus around that, but I don't think there is consensus around non-conforming lots.
Yep.
So I want to just follow up, but there's no rule that the house has to be shaped like a rectangle in its footprint anyway, so that's all. kind of-
This is added information,
Right,
like
right.
he said at the beginning, that we don't necessarily have, but yeah, we're in the business of doing conforming lots at least. I mean,
Yeah,
there are
yeah.
certain things you have to make waivers for the roads, we get that, but the lots from the very get-go should be conforming lots. Houses, but it's not us.
yeah. Let me look at it, we'll work on it. and Get
And I
it
just
there.
wanted to confirm that that lot actually has frontage. I didn't double check it.
It does.
But
It does. Yeah.
that's 80 feet
Yep.
on that.
So here's how you get the 80 feet. It's here,
It's the curve
Here.
plus
Oh,
the,
sorry, I
Here.
didn't see that.
Oh, that is a
Kick out there.
bizarre lot.
that's all the, that's the.
I am, one of the things we hope is that the lots make sense when you look at them, so that you don't end up with gerrymandered lots. And this really screams gerrymandered lot. I don't know, the homeowner is going to be very unhappy that they have to go out and essentially mow the lawn on the other person's property, because that's what it's going to look like to them. They can't use that part of the lot.
I know,
So,
it's less than ideal, but it's not,
Well,
It's not a fatal
does
flaw.
lot 5 have more frontage than it need?
the key is you
Can you
need,
shift that
Yeah.
down a little bit? See if she shifts the property line down.
yeah. If we're just worried about how pretty or ugly this is, I don't think that is, because, this is the most valuable lot. So as soon as I start shrinking this lot to favor this one, it creates problems for me. So I really don't want to shrink this property line just to make something more pretty in terms of the frontage. If the frontage works, which it does, then,
well, I'm thinking of the homeowner.
I'm not worried about the homeowner because,
I am, okay? This planning board is worried about the homeowner.
all right, we just have a disagreement on that then.
Yeah, we will obviously agree to disagree on that.
Okay.
So this went through a whole lot of discussion. I'm directing this at Brian, because you were part, not that you
I was
had a
privy,
vote, but you
I was
were privy,
privy,
right?
sure.
So I would have thought that by the time we got to this point, that everyone reviewed the frontage and was comfortable that there are 5 lots for this project. Is that fair to say?
Most of the conversation was centered around this lot line, the lot line for this, and we want it to be completely straight and centered it around whether it's cul-de-sac or a hammerhead. But it basically was like 5 conforming lots, and we get the X amount of space so that we can get a driveway access permit in there. Still up to the planning board to when and if this comes in to, shape it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, there's I mean, it's not that we're completely boxed in, but I guess I can just say that, we are not completely boxed in, but there are a few things, meaning that,
There's a general expectation at this point that there was a project in front of us that works with the town's objectives and that produces 5 lots, and
Well,
is that fair to say?
Let me just say that I think that corner is gonna have to change to make the turning movements work for the fire truck, so I don't think we need to.
I mean, this, yeah, this.
We need to
you're
focus
talking
in
about
on that.
this
I
hairpin
just
turn.
don't think the truck's gonna be able to make that right-hand turn out of the hammerhead, so I think you're gonna end up having to probably rework that corner a little bit, so we probably shouldn't get too hung up just yet on that.
So that's why I'm feeling like this board's kind of, I'm not, don't take it the wrong way, it's just there's a lot of engineering that, and discussion with Mr. Miller that we really can't contribute to.
At least not tonight.
Because I mean, the frontage question, and that is really weird frontage, and,
Yeah, but the definition, I mean, the code doesn't say you can't have really weird frontage, it says frontage.
No, I think we're certainly more concerned at the moment about that, the turning radius.
Right.
There's no doubt it will change, even if it's slightly or not. There's no doubt it will, or I shouldn't say no doubt, it's likely it will change. But basically, there was only a couple things that, the attorneys were going back and forth
yeah, that's
between.
why I'm feeling like, and I'm not.
No, I mean,
complaining,
it was more of,
Oh.
he has to make 5 lots work for him, and if this, we're here to, we are here to review a project. We are not here to do anything else. We're here to review the project when it comes in, and we'll review it like any other,
Yeah.
kind of.
The discussion between Mr. Mill and the town was mostly on where are those boundary lines drawn. He's responsible for making this subdivision work. And we are responsible for making sure that he gets it done. So
That he will.
that's so
I didn't hear you, there was another easy rider out there, right? And that's big.
I was just,
There's a
the
lot
town,
about it.
the agreement with Mr. Miller, all of the work was on determining where the lot lines are. And so whatever is within Mr. Miller's property, he has to make sure works. And so our role is to look at the subdivision when it comes to us for approval and dig in even more than we are now. But yeah, so let's wait and see what the fire truck does. Beth, or what it can't do.
Makes a noise.
Makes a noise. Made a lot of noise when we came here earlier this evening.
That's true, but we do like those nice red fire trucks to be able to get to people's homes.
Yes. So, Beth, I had a question about the slope. The 10% slope is something that we really want to get around. Is that just never going to, we're not going to be able to develop this without a slope like
I
that?
would really look at Mr. Miller to see, I mean, I
Okay,
think
we don't, how many?
it's a matter of what you want to do to the site in terms of cut and fill, right?
Right,
So,
right.
I agree that I don't think 10% is ideal, especially given the steep slope on
The side slope.
on that one side.
I mean, I'm concerned that people will walk this road. They will walk it in the dark, they will walk it in inclement conditions, just because they're gonna wanna come down and look at the fells. And if there is some sort of access off the hammerhead into it, they will walk that road. And so I understand the desire of some not to have sidewalks, although I think they would increase the safety. I'm worried about the walkability of this road. I assume that all of the emergency vehicles can get up a 10% slope with no problem?
I mean, there are certainly roads in Winchester that are 10%, they're not
Right,
ideal.
yeah.
I mean, I think that's
Right,
why,
Yeah.
years ago, the maximum used to be 10%, and we reduced it to 8% because
Right.
we felt like that wasn't
So-
a very safe condition.
I guess I'm just stating my concern. I'm not an engineer, so I don't know. I was just, that's it, I'm stating my concern.
And that's in my letter too, obviously, that stating our preference would be to get it closer to 8 than to 10.
Yeah, I'm just concerned that this is not going to be a really walkable road.
Oh, I live right at the head of a slope that goes like that, and people love it, and the kids love it, so.
Kids and people love it, but not
Yeah, so,
everyone
but I
is
think in
capable of
this-
doing an 8% grade.
In this
That's
instance,
going to
the
I'm sure
exclude.
it's
the
worse than-
concern is that You know, in a normal neighborhood where you have houses on both sides, there's a little bit more flexibility for people to step off to the side of the road. In this case, you have a guardrail and a very steep slope, so you really only have one side of the road where it's safe to walk on if you have to kind of move out of the way of a vehicle.
And there's no
Especially in
place to
bad
step.
weather.
And right, so it is definitely a concern on this street, for sure.
I mean, there's no way of putting a walkway on the other side of that guardrail, which would be horrible, because
Well, so again, I mean, anything can be
Thinking like a more
done, right?
memorial
It's just a
drive,
matter of grading and potentially putting a retaining wall.
Yeah, it
So
sounds
there's, you
like
know,
you're doing a
Trade-offs
wall.
to everything.
anything
no,
can
I'm
be
just-
done. It's
just-
just,
throwing stuff out, yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so that's my main concern there.
You're only gonna move it if you wanna get it moved.
Yeah, so what I'd like to do is, I know that we had at least one person in the audience who has a question, so if you address the question to me, if you come up to the table, so we can get your name on the microphone, so the people in Winchester could hear you. So whichever seat you want to take, and just address the question to me. Sure. And then I will address it to Mr. Miller, because I think that's the way it's supposed to work.
I do have one question. I see the...
But could you say
Oh,
your
I'm
name?
sorry, Bruce Schwartzman, Winchester resident, Black, live nearby, but on Highland Ave. I was involved this for the last few years and coming to all the meetings, and then I've missed a lot of the last, when it kind of got to the lawyers talking and the selectmen and things, it kind of got away from the planning board, I know. And there was this whole land swap done. One question I have is the 1,800 square foot footprint. That leads to what, a 3,000, 4,000 square foot house roughly? I know that's more,
That is Mr. Miller?
16, but which we're guessing a standard 2.5, so that's 4,000,
Yeah.
okay.
is my guess.
There is, in the narrative, there's actually a discussion of what the footprints are, the neighboring houses, and I think you were showing that, at least in the immediate neighborhood, they
Right.
were around 2,200 square feet. And I don't know whether
Sounds
those,
about right. For an average of.
oh,
around
actually, it was 1,600 to 1,900, I'm sorry,
Footprints or total?
Footprints.
footprints. So I don't know whether those houses were built to the max, but it's a comparable footprint to the homes that exist. Perhaps they're taller.
Yeah, well, yeah, the houses in the neighborhood are all, I bet if you did the average square foot, they're probably 2,500 total.
Okay, yeah.
If they're smaller houses.
They're
But
older
I-
houses, they tend to
Yeah,
be
if they're
that.
smaller, I get that. My one, I guess, comment is, a year or two ago, Mr. Miller presented of 5, well, I think at one point it was 6 houses, but then it was 5 houses, and the engineering, the environmental committee had an engineer on the staff, and they were looking at it, and they were very concerned about water storage and tanks, and just it really being tight, the numbers working out. And obviously here, you guys have all expressed some concerns about, this lot being funky, the road having a steep grade, all those things that, obviously, we're packing in 5 houses, they barely fit, with pushbacks and zone, without waivers. And I understand why we're here, because we had a gun put to our head. It's either 40B, 32 units, or this.
Yeah, we're running out of time, so you
Yeah.
get your
No, no,
question,
well,
please.
so we're here because of that. I understand there was a negotiation. He had a threat, I'll put 40B in, and so everyone's back down, because no one wants the 32 units. What I don't get is, I wasn't involved in the negotiation, obviously, but we've got 5 houses, just as big as ever, and now we're gonna also have a townhouse, Winchester, 2 houses put in the same area, and it's amazing that all the numbers are gonna work, from a drainage, from a road, from trees coming down.
Well, let me bring you back to something that the town engineer said, which was to pull in a separate and independent consultant using something Mass General Law called 53G, which allows us to hire a consultant on the developer's dime who will review those numbers. So we will have an independent assessment of whether or not this works. So that's the best sort of answer
Okay.
I could imagine we would get.
Works as far as,
This drainage.
Drainage.
Beth, do you want to come and tell us more about your ideas of 53G? Did I
no, I
capture that?
understand drainage.
Okay, yeah.
I just mean even things that
So-
we're talking about, how far we're talking about pushing, just lots being non-conforming maybe, or the
Well,
fire
one of
engine, it
the
just seems,
A lot of the things that are done in terms of these lots is trying to make it easier on the neighbors to provide more buffer. So that's why we're talking about moving the houses away, and so giving some sort of a relief so they can be closer to the front lot line.
Right.
And that's to allow the people in the back.
I understand.
So the lots are large enough for the homes. They're not sub-sized lots.
Right.
The only thing we're talking about is the placement of the house to reduce the impact on the neighbors.
correct.
So there are very few variances requested in terms of actual buildable lots.
Correct.
So-
There's some waivers being given to make this even a development. This was zoned,
No.
Clarify terms, by the way. The waivers will relate to our subdivision regs, and you should look for it online. It's a different document from our zoning, and the zoning has to do with the standard throughout, that's the zoning map on the wall there. And so that, you'll look at the zoning bylaw, and those will be, will we need variances, or will we need any kind of special permit? Nobody's been, I guess special permit would
It's
be
new house,
outside of
yeah,
the
it's-
setbacks, so
It's
that
new
would be.
houses, so it's
I
variances.
meant things that you mentioned, side slopes,
Oh,
grade
okay.
of road, those type of things. The grading, side slope, those things you've been mentioning.
Those will be from the subdivision.
in the
regs.
subdivision.
Right, so that's, is that a waiver or a special permit?
Waivers.
Okay, waivers, right,
And
not
that's this
variance.
board.
Right, that's
Yeah.
this board. That's-
Waivers are, waivers will be this board,
Right.
variances will be the
understand.
special permit
Yeah.
granting authority, the zoning board.
So can I, is there someone, 1 second, is there someone else in the audience who has a question?
Yeah, well, yeah, I just
Oh,
have a comments.
Yeah, well, then come on up and talk, please.
Okay.
Please take the hot seat.
We want to hear from him.
The town of Winchester needs to know who you are and your voice, so please.
I'm Mike McCauley. I live at 28 North Border Road, which is, backs up to lot, the one on the top left.
That last
That would be
house on
Lot 4
Yeah.
and 5.
Okay?
Just a couple things. You were talking about access to the fells, and I think you had brought it up. I think you're inviting trouble, especially for the new houses there. I don't think they would want people walking through the yards. I certainly don't want anybody walking through my yard to access the fells, because I do back up to those houses. I think the best bet that you guys actually had decided, and what you guys were talking about, was having some sort of a pathway at the end of the hammerhead. That I think that will self-regulate itself eventually. I think people will go that route anyway, because
Yeah.
nobody wants anybody
We
walking.
have one, how do you want to?
I just wanted to clarify, I was not talking about walking through people's property. I was saying before we decide the lot lines, we could allow for a right-of-way where people are allowed to walk and it is not in someone's.
Oh,
or in
yeah,
their
no,
yard.
right,
Yeah.
but when
I
you
was
said
not
maybe
suggesting-
going through the houses and stuff,
I was not suggesting
I
through
don't think that-
someone's yard, I was suggesting an actual path.
yeah, I think in time, people will probably find a path
Yeah, it sounds
off of
like
that hammerhead, because that's what happens. There's current paths up there now from people from Highland Ave, actually, that are going through that lot 5 already, so
Okay.
that's gonna happen eventually. The other thing is, what you had mentioned, Brian, I know it goes through zoning, and I can speak for myself and probably some of the other neighbors on Dana, that we would like the houses pushed as far as they can to the street and away from our yards. And I know you guys don't have anything to do with that, it has to go through zoning, but I don't know if you have any.
It would be a recommendation that we would do on any other special
Alright.
permit or variance
Well, that would be
I imagine.
appreciated, and I think Craig is on board with that too, if,
I think we're all working towards that.
yeah, yeah. And the other thing what Bruce had brought up is just the size of the houses. I just hope they don't, not too overwhelming for the neighborhood, you know? And I know you guys have nothing to do with that too, but.
It's, we sort of do, we sort of don't. I mean, if they're too big, they come in under site plan review, I believe.
Yeah.
So,
So, yeah, if they are over, I mean, in this zone, it's 5,000 square feet, so if they're over 5,000 square feet,
Yeah.
they would go through the zoning board for site plan review, and we would have a bite at that apple as a recommendation, but, I mean, you can talk, I would think, I would imagine Craig is not gonna hit that 5K mark if I had to guess.
There's no need to do that.
Based on our discussions.
So there would not, in that case, there wouldn't be site plan review just based on square footage.
And the whole process, again, has to go through conservation and all that again, right? I mean,
the next official step is if Craig were to file preliminary subdivision plans, is that the next?
Technically, the next step is the RFP, which has been
Oh, the
issued,
RFP.
and then once that's settled and everything is okay in that department, then,
This is the RFP because we're doing a land swap. So that has to go through a bidding process.
right, so after that process, the winning bidder would be able to submit a subdivision application. And that's when it would, that's when we would start reviewing.
what do you mean the winning bidder? I don't know.
Well, so, the way this process, this is town-owned land that we are,
Swapping.
it's a bid, meaning that we are putting it out to bid.
Oh, so we can buy it?
If you are, if you are, meet the requirements of the RFP.
Which the select board will issue, have
They
they?
issued it last week.
Okay, so go to the town's website, the RFP will be listed.
Yeah, this Thursday.
This Thursday?
Okay.
Sorry.
It's not a bid, it's a request for proposal, so it's not like a
Oh,
dollar value.
but-
It's a
It's an RF
quantitative,
the RF
comparative-
Design, I guess it's probably design selection, then it's,
No, it's an RFP.
It's a full RFP.
Yeah, it's, you know, there's
And it,
criteria that have to be, minimum criteria that have to be met, and there's ways in which the proposals are ranked.
and that'll be up this Thursday, you said?
I believe it's available Thursday. yes.
Okay, so check out Thursday or Friday, go look at the town
I can get
website.
email me, I can get a copy for you.
Wait, can you get a copy? You can't get a copy before it's made public.
No, after Thursday, then I
Yeah.
can,
But at that point.
it's everywhere.
Do you have these plans too, Brian?
I can send these around again. These are preliminary and.
Okay, no, I know,
they're,
yeah,
you
and
know,
they still
but
need
they
to
are
be approved.
already public documents, so I
Right.
certainly
Yeah, I
cannot
mean-
deny the
Because
plans.
that's-
The key thing to emphasize is these are preliminary designs. They're not final.
I understand.
And that things can change, although I would imagine the final designs from Mr. Miller will be very similar. So any other concerns? Again, look out for the RFP, you'll see what the terms are, and we will be having further actual public hearings where we hope that everyone who's interested will show up and we will have lots of time for comment from the public, so.
And thank you for coming. by
And
the
please,
way.
and thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for your comments, I appreciate it very much.
Excellent, thank you. So, and unbelievably, we are almost on time.
Astounding.
Is your voice going to hold out? You sound like you're a little under the weather.
Oh, do you have a cold? A summer cold?
Yeah,
Oh.
Yeah, that's not fair.
that
Thank
is
you,
not
Beth.
fun.
Thank you.
thanks. Did you want to give the background on?
Sure.
Why
Why-
this is even a topic?
Yeah.
I mean, I'll go into why
No,
we're
no.
talking about it, but
Yeah, sure.
that it's come to you.
So this, the idea of accessory dwelling units was first brought to the planning board about 18 months ago by a group of concerned residents that are some from the Housing Partnership Board, I believe some from the Housing Authority, and some from the Disability Access Commission. It piqued our interest. They basically wanted, we were dealing with a lot of zoning articles at the time, and they basically pitched a bylaw. It wasn't really mature enough at the time for us to just take it over because we were doing other work. And then since then, it kind of fizzled out. The idea of it has not been on the forefront of the planning board until very recently. And the idea was like, well, this is something that we should learn more about in order to do any potential zoning changes in the future. The little bit that we have found out is that there is a lot that we can restrict through accessory dwelling unit bylaws. I think the possibility of a fall town meeting, I think it's possible but low.
Yeah.
Not probable.
Yeah.
Possible, but not probable.
Yeah, possible, but like I said, I think the more that we started looking into this, that, you know, there's a lot that we can actually govern, a lot more than I thought we even could. So we, Heather and I met a few times and just kind of to determine the structure of the presentation, and we did some research, and this is what we found.
Betsy, would you really like to be over there?
I would, because then I can see that, if you don't mind.
Just
So I
miss-
don't have to be
So we're
ending
gonna,
up with a crick in my neck.
we're gonna give some background and try to go quickly so we can all talk about it, since there's a lot to discuss. And so for anyone who's listening, who's not sure what we're talking about, accessory dwelling units can go by other names. Sometimes we call them ADUs for short, but I just listed here some other regional things that we might call them, like granny flats, in-law units, or in-law apartments. I think Boston's calling them additional dwelling units. Sometimes people call them tiny houses if they're in your backyard, a secondary dwelling unit, or a carriage house. So we're going to go over the definition that Brian and I are using for this discussion. I mean, there's different ways you could define what you're talking about when you talk about an ADU. We're going to have a couple of pictures, talk about potential benefits and challenges, and then a little bit about what people in the area are doing, and then Brian's going to talk about what that means for zoning, or what it could mean, what kind of language we could use, or what we might propose for Winchester. So when we're talking about ADUs, we're talking about a second smaller unit on the same property as a single-family house, or attached. So either within a single-family house, in which case it would be like in an attic or a basement or a unit carved out somewhere in the house, or a separate structure, which could be an apartment within what was a garage or above a garage, or potentially a smaller cottage or tiny house in the backyard. Yeah.
Would you mind questions be left to the end?
It's up to you, we can.
Yeah. That's great.
Okay. Go ahead, then.
Okay.
It just looks like it's really nicely.
I just had a
prepared.
question right there
You have a
about
question
that.
right about this?
Yeah,
Okay.
so you're not including purpose-built additions to existing homes. So for instance, if you had a relative who needed first floor access, couldn't make it to the second floor, and if you were to build a special unit for them, so they only needed to use, that's not included in your definition.
I didn't list it here, but I think we are also talking about that.
Okay,
It's just within,
Within the
that's
structure.
just within the structure
Okay.
type
I
of
said that
ADU.
part
yeah.
out loud, but
okay,
it's
my
not listed
apologies, so
there,
it's not within an existing structure, it's within the whole envelope of the main house, okay?
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
My
Meaning
apologies.
not a
easiest
separate,
way-
not a separate building.
Not a second, okay.
Yeah, so the easiest way is if you have a space you're not using, for example, a basement, and you don't have to do an addition, so that's why I listed those,
Okay.
because those are more easily carved out sometimes. These are some pictures that Brian found. Both of these show an addition above a garage, in which case we would be talking about raising the height of a garage, which we'll get into some of the potential issues of that later. But these are pictures that we liked and thought looked sort of like what we could imagine in Winchester, since there are a lot of historic homes with garages in the back. The one on the left, it could have been a garage, or it could be a new structure. I'm not exactly sure where that one came from, but it's about the scale of what you might have as a secondary structure. On the right, this is showing, I think, that a unit above the garage in the back, and so the idea is that from the street, you're keeping with an existing neighborhood context, and it still reads as a single-family house. So the reason we're talking about these is because they have a lot of potential benefits. So I've listed some of them here. There might be some that we haven't thought of. The first one is just to meet the housing demand and to increase the supply of smaller units. That's something we've talked about as an issue in town. And it's a way to do it keeping the existing urban fabric and not adding, say, like a larger building to add a bunch of units all at the same time. You're scattering them throughout a neighborhood. The second reason is that the homeowner has the potential to gain the income from the rent, which is different than if you were to build a new larger building and the developer is the one getting the income. So this can be something that residents might be interested in because they get the income and they can control who lives there and how it works and the size and everything. I also listed here, it could make our existing housing stock potentially more affordable. So if someone wanted to move here and it would help them to be able to rent out a secondary unit, that would make, I don't want to use the word affordable, but I guess I did there, a little bit more affordable for someone looking to buy in Winchester if they could offset the mortgage. The reason that Brian mentioned is that some people have shown an interest in having their family live on the same property as them, so that can go in either age direction, either an elderly parent that you might want on the same property, or an adult child that wants their own space but can benefit from living on the same property. This is similar, but there's also the opportunity for people to age in place, and that's something that I think is an issue in town in terms of if someone wants to downsize, they might be displaced and their house might be knocked down. They sell it for a price and a developer knocks it down. And anyway, that's a related issue in my mind, is that if you could stay in your home and maybe live in the smaller unit, like this actually happened with the woman who we bought our house from. she raised her family in the larger unit, and then as her kids moved out, she lived in the smaller unit and got the income from the larger unit. So that's a way that people can stay in their home as they age and get additional income. The next one I mentioned, which is distributing new housing throughout town in a smaller way, a smaller scale. And then the last is just diversifying the demographics. I don't know what kind of interest we have for this, but it would change who was living here. You might have like a 1-bedroom, probably at most a 2-bedroom, maybe even just a studio unit that you'd be adding to the neighborhood. Some of the potential challenges, I know there are more than what I've listed here, but one of them is just if there, when I say challenges, I guess what I meant here was reasons people might be opposed to this idea. There are other types of challenges, but these are reasons people might not like the idea of ADUs. So the first is just that you'd be increasing the density in the existing single-family neighborhoods. The next one is that you're introducing new privacy issues. So say you have a historic house, and so the garage was in the back and it was right on the lot line, and then you're talking about having someone live above that. Your neighbors, might have windows looking down in their yard that they didn't have before. So that's something to think about. Parking is something that I don't think Brian and I have thought through too much, but we know is something that people could be concerned about. Where is that person going to park? Is there space on the street or in the driveway? Something that comes up is in terms of how do you avoid having people build these units and then use them like Airbnb, and how do you control those leases, and what are the terms of those, and are we really going to be able to enforce them? And so just put that as a question to think about. Before we talk about what we might think about for Winchester, Brian and I thought it was helpful to look around and see what the neighboring towns are doing. So this is from a study that Brian had circulated. So there's about 37 out of the 100 municipalities in the MAPC region that currently allow ADUs for non-family or caregivers. The reason I wrote that is because we thought it would be pretty difficult to enforce that leases are only for family members, so we thought we should assume that the regulations would be for anybody. And these are all the towns listed who currently allow for that. There's a big range in terms of the restrictions that we saw for all of those municipalities. I listed some of them here. Some of them we might want to consider, and some we thought were too restrictive, but I put them here just so people can understand sort of what other people are doing. One is owner occupancy, so that would mean that you have to be the owner in the single-family larger unit and then rent out the smaller one. The second one is limiting the bedroom size. That might come up in terms of people being concerned about school-aged children entering the neighborhood. Maximum square footage is something that some people are controlling. Lot size, so that means you would have to have a certain lot size to even be able to consider a secondary unit. Some municipalities are limiting even the year of construction for the single-family house. We talked about relatives only. Some municipalities are limiting the number of permits per year. That's a way to control how many new units are entering the supply. And then, this one means that you could only
Like Carriage House.
you can only use existing detached subservient structures that were there. So that would be a garage or a carriage house. And then Brian's going to talk about what that means for zoning and what we might do.
Thank you. So as of right now in town, we do allow accessory buildings in very specific places. They can't be in any of the in any of the front or the side yard, but can be in the rear yard up to 5 feet. And really, the only thing that we have that could even resemble some type of accessory dwelling unit, and it's not even real, is that it's living quarters for domestic employees that do not contain any kitchen facilities. So this has to do with you need a duplex and why we're in this whole situation to begin with. So there's no kitchen facilities. That's not a unit. That's not an accessory unit. That's just not a unit. That's a room.
Right.
So one of the case studies, we can go there, but basically the case study is on Lexington, and basically everything that it says about Lexington in terms of that it highlights, in terms of relative size, a highly built-out suburb, strong demand for housing, pretty much everything that they talked about in Lexington, we could say the same for in Winchester. Fairly affluent community, close proximity to Boston, and they basically said that the land for this new construction in Lexington is extremely limited, and the demand for housing is high, and this is a reason why accessory dwelling units would be good for a town like Lexington, and therefore potentially a town like Winchester, in order to fill this need for either downsizing or side steps, or there's really just not a lot of diverse types of housing. This would increase the diverse types of housing that we have in Winchester. I want to go through a couple of the ADUs really quickly, just kind of say what some of these neighboring communities, what types of things they're regulating. So Belmont, really the only way you can do this is through detached historic structures. So that's the only way you can do it. This is probably one of the more restrictive ones that we saw.
And that's of the 37.
This is one of the 37, so this is only looking at 101 cities and towns, because that's the MAPC region. So this is one of the 37, and it's very simple. They don't care who goes there, they don't care anything, as long as it's in one of these, historic structures that's such as an antique carriage house. There can't be too many of these, and it even says most houses lack these historic accessory buildings. So that's a super restrictive way to go. I think that's, one end of the spectrum. Concord, I'm so sorry that you guys got sent, and I'm really sorry to Suzanne that you guys get sent the entire Concord zoning bylaw.
Good reading, all right?
I'm sure it's filled with lots of great things,
It's got
but
page numbers on it.
yeah, page numbers are good.
I know, I have to say, I was scratching my head over that.
So, yeah, I sent an email
I got
after
the
saying,
email, but I think it was
sorry about
good.
it. But,
Looking forward to
so,
seeing the whole thing.
it's a special permit, for the alteration of an existing building, and it can't be more than 2 units, provided that all of these things, the gross floor area, basements, screen room porches, they can't exceed 1/5 of the gross floor area of the total. So it's limiting it in terms of how big it can be based upon just a square footage. Also, any additions they put on, this is, you'll see all throughout, most of them, any additions or anything, it should always be subservient to the main house, so it doesn't necessarily look like a second full unit, that it should look like a single-family home. All of them have some flavor of that. Yeah.
Without a tunnel or pergola.
Yeah.
Of course, we had the bridge thing, and I haven't seen those in other towns, so.
I know, because we did try to get rid of those.
It's very
I
creative.
don't think,
huh?
yeah, tunnels seem to be very creative, so I
Builders in
just.
town who come up with.
So
Change the
Lexington,
zoning for that.
so they have a couple different types of ways that they regulate this. They have basic ones, accessory apartments, so they've kind of gone through all the different types that you can go through. Lexington's is a little more comprehensive.
It was passed in 16,
It was,
so 2 years ago.
yeah. And I think they've made some slight changes recently, but
That would be
they,
interesting to hear about, because changes always tell you what went wrong.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
That's true.
So they kind of regulate everything, and this is, I wouldn't actually say that it's too restrictive, it's just that they
We don't have the roof, we just have the PowerPoint deck.
oh, you don't,
We didn't
That's
have
an-
the- No, we got the deck. from the
Okay.
PowerPoint show.
that's
It's okay.
odd,
Fine.
but I have, well, I can
If
send
you
those around again.
circulate this, it's got the live links, I presume?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I actually have the whole bylaw, the whole ADU bylaw for Lexington.
Dropbox.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
It's only like 4 pages,
Yeah,
I think, or
don't
5 pages. So, for the basic ones, it has to be in the principal building, can't exceed 1,000 square feet, no more than 2 bedrooms. This is kind of a standard, that's not crazy what Lexington's trying to do there with this basic accessory apartment. Then that's basically by right, and then through a special permit is a number of these things. Can't exceed 40% of the gross floor area, the size of the dwelling is consistent with nearby one-family dwellings, and then if you're having this other, an accessory structure, that's again a special permit. So they have this kind of very cookie cutter version of what you can do by right. It's very easy, and then if you're really doing anything outside of that, it's a special permit. It seems to be more along the lines of what we do here in Winchester, something along those lines. So Newton, I believe this is the last one, yeah, Newton's the last one. So for an internal, they basically, it's a by right project. If it's internal, there's, an accessory apartment is located within a single or two-family dwelling. Detached, these are just going through the definitions, but, what was the one? Oh, this was the one that was weird, and I didn't particularly like it. Number 5, limited number of individuals in the principal and the accessory structure. I thought that's a total overreach in my opinion, my personal opinion. Weird that a house must exist for 4 years prior to application.
I
I don't
saw
know.
that.
Build
I
it
saw
that
that.
way if you have extended family plans.
Yeah, so that's a little strange. I think they're just looking at trying to make it so maybe tear down and rebuilds don't incorporate this in, but I don't, so that I don't fully.
I can imagine they might do this to try to circumvent some zoning bylaws, if you were able to add on later and not, you don't tell people you're gonna add on this unit, and then all of a sudden you do.
All of a sudden, boom, there it is.
Yeah, so I guess,
Wouldn't you want to know it when the house is being
Yeah,
built,
it's
though?
easier to build it at that time.
I mean, yeah, that's what I don't, I mean,
yeah, well, maybe we can ask them what they were trying
It
to
was-
do.
well, it was- yeah,
Because
I
they're
mean,
not the
yeah.
only ones who have that. There are several other towns which have this requirement that the primary structure be existing for a certain period of time, so.
well, some of them, one we saw, it has to exist before 1950, 50, or 36, yeah. Yeah, it was like, and it was just very, and you look and see how many buildings are actually still standing in this small town in Western Mass or whatever, like.
Probably only one building that counts.
It was odd. It was an odd move. Parking seems to be this catch-all of doesn't seem to be any kind of rhyme or reason from town to town. Some of them, if it's one unit, you don't have to have any requirement. This one, Newton talks about screening sufficiently, so that's in our past, so we kind of like that idea. But certainly you can imagine if there's going to be a potential parking issues, if you're going to have a 2-bedroom apartment above a normal single-family home's garage, so. So what might we propose for Winchester? So one, the idea is to create more housing units that align with Winchester's existing neighborhood character. That seems to be a purpose, a main one that Winchester would agree with as this potentially moves forward. So one idea would just be one additional long-term rental unit allowed on a single-family property by a homeowner. This means that no additions, you're just carving out a unit in your house, essentially. Something like that could be considered a potential by right. I'm going to get to that a little bit further, but I think something as basic as that is there's no addition. You, obviously it has to meet building code for a potential unit. You can't make like a 112 square foot unit. So policy considerations, one thing that came up, we did see this a number of times, that they wouldn't be turned into condos and sold separately as outside of part of the principal structure. That's kind of a big issue. Any potential dimensional requirements that we should really think about that in terms of a minimum or a maximum size that we would be willing to talk about. It's always obviously difficult to determine any type of enforcement issues, but you would imagine there are many.
We must have enforcement issues for current rental properties, or not issues, but we have enforcement procedures for current rental properties.
Yeah, I think it's difficult.
It is. I
yeah.
can tell you they're all,
Well, all I'm saying is this is not a new problem. This is if we have a problem.
It would be an expanded
it would-
existing
It
problem.
would be.
Expanded problem.
Right, but I presume that, so that's all I'm saying, is that
Because those issues.
if we know how to deal with it now, we will know how to deal with it later.
Put it
Not
there,
dealing
just
If we
as a
don't know how to
backup.
deal with it now, we don't know how to deal with it later. So, okay, yes.
And we broke this up into another category of potential considerations for the homeowner, relation to design, how any potential financing could affect the rate of how many of these units are going to actually potentially go online, and how they actually get permitted.
Just, I didn't want to cut you off,
Yep.
but the financing, I think I put that word there because some places are trying to encourage it. And so they might have special financing to help homeowners be able to do this. Boston's doing that, and I think maybe it was Portland. There's probably others that have special financing programs to help homeowners.
The other consideration you might want to put down there is insurance. It's going to change how you insure your home.
Yeah, I would think so. I would think so.
So it's just positive or negative, I don't know what it is, but.
And this was just kind of a matrix that we started just to get us kind of going in terms of something that would even be an idea to think about talking about things in Winchester. So, if you have no expansion of the footprint, no expansion of the height, like nothing is changing within the house and in terms of the setbacks or the height, it seems like if we're gonna have any type of, excuse me, by right projects in town, that something like that would be it, where you have a maximum of a certain size, whether it's 1,000 or less, and there's no expansion in the footprint or the height, that something like that is what's in the wheelhouse of a by right project, for pretty much most of the towns that we are comparable to.
So I hate to interrupt, but so this would be comparable, so this is something you could do to your house anyway, except for the maximum size of the square footage. It's just that you can turn it into an accessory unit. Because so a
That's an
homeowner.
idea to discuss.
These are all potential ideas that we
Right,
I'm just trying to,
Possibility.
yeah, that's part of my discussion. is-
The reason why I even put in these dots here was simply to foster conversation. The ideas people want to
We
have.
are fostering conversation, that's why I'm talking
Meaning that a
about
lot of time it's better to respond to something rather than, well, what do you want? So the idea is like, well, like, yeah. It's the start of a conversation, so these are just a few of the things, there's probably like 15 different things
Yeah.
that we can actually talk about, which we don't necessarily have to tonight. But these are some of the things that I thought that at least needed to be talked about during the conversation. So whether, if we're talking about new accessory structures, pretty much it seems like under all circumstances, if you're putting a new accessory structure that's going to have a unit on it, that should probably be a special permit. Expansion of the footprint or the height, again, even if no other review is triggered, like they're adhering to all setbacks, it seems like that potentially probably more of a site plan review, which takes into account neighbors and safety, and so it seems like that's, yeah, I mean, if they're not expanding the footprint or the height, then it's debatable, I think, whether or not that should be able to be denied. It's I mean, all these are long conversations, right? I'm like touching on them for like
Yeah.
20 seconds. Historical buildings, I mean, this could go anywhere. I thought it was very strange, to be honest, that there were certain towns that said you can't even think about doing this if it's built after 1933 or whatever. That, there is certainly, I think there's some merit to being able to give historical buildings another shot at, extending their life. So, something related to that of pushing forward something related to historical buildings, not saying that the only way you can do it is if it's in a historic structure, but it seems like if we could somehow use it to help potentially save a building, then there could be some merit to that. Parking, I'm honestly at a loss with, so, I just put a whole bunch of question marks there I'm kicking that can, because
It's
I don't know,
It's actually huge.
is the answer?
It is.
I'm serious, I don't know what the right answer is.
No, we don't, and especially in neighborhoods.
So, we also I started looking at potential things for how big a lot would need to be. So, the way we handle it in the RG is we look at for a single is 6,500 square feet. To have a double, it's not 13, but it's 11, it's nearly double. To have a duplex. To have a unit within the house, no accessory buildings, or even if it is an accessory building, I certainly don't think it would need to be that equivalent. So what, like going from 6,500 to 11,000, like I said, that's, almost, 80% higher. Something like, and again, this is total preliminary, like, I don't know, something like a 25 or a 35 is mostly what I had found, somewhere in between 20 and 40% addition would have to, that's like the minimum size required. And if you were ever to even think about doing a unit. So that's something that we can talk about. And another is, if the gross floor area, so we have up here that if it's by right, if it's under 1,000, so therefore anything, oh, whoops.
It's a separate issue.
Yeah, this is,
That's a strange.
I think you just repeated.
yeah, no,
the
this is,
first one.
yeah, I'm saying here, yeah, that's a repeat.
One thing we didn't.
So
put
this
on
is the same
here
as this first one.
Oh, okay, got
Is,
it.
is what's already there, like I had put maybe only for single-family lots, but we do have some two-family lots, and it, so.
If a
the
two-family would-
allows two-family, so we might break that up on the chart too.
You could just do a maximum number of additional bedrooms, so you could just say that's one way that others have done it, so that rather than units, they could just say, whether you have one unit or two unit, you can only have an additional 2 bedrooms. So if you have a duplex, you can have a max of 2 bedrooms. If you have a single, you can have a max of 2 bedrooms, addition.
So how does this, there are two things that I don't know if this is implied, and that is kitchen facilities.
That's what we mean.
Yes,
So that's.
that is what we're talking, that is,
The full unit
Actually,
with
what-
a kitchen.
That's
Okay.
actually the distinction.
that's the only, that's the only.
Okay, I just want to make sure that.
Oh, and separate entrance.
Right. Well, you have this servant thing, but that doesn't mean it's talking about a servant, but a roomer, you could imagine someone just renting a room.
Right,
And
they
they-
do that, and that's
But
okay.
you can do that now.
We
No one
can?
would know.
Yes, sir.
I think, yeah, it's not
And
regulated.
some people I know just
Look what-
It's not
anecdotally
regulated, but
build-
it is permissible.
Yes, it is. It's
Okay.
a
I
certain
wouldn't say
number
it's-
of, well, technically, legally, I don't know where it is, it's in the town bylaw, I
Sublet
think. It has
or-
to- No, it has to do with how many unrelated adults.
No, it's from, thing from 18, whatever.
Okay, so there's that was the one.
That's all,
the only
but
question?
people
But some
definitely
people, to
can-
get around this, they build a unit for, say, a parent, and they just don't put a stove, but I heard someone
Correct.
just talking yesterday about a
correct.
full kitchen,
Well-
but no stove,
Well,
just to get around
the
it.
thing, well,
I have a colleague who did the same thing,
Yeah.
is they put in a unit for the in-laws, and then they gave them like a hot plate and a
Right.
microwave.
Well,
and
now
then
there's
after
even.
a certain number of years
there-
passed, they were able to put in.
Forget the hot plate now, you can get lots of different types of things that just go into a normal jack that
Right,
are like
that's
full
right.
ovens that are, I mean, seriously, they're working for, it's not a microwave oven, it's a full-on convection oven that you
Every
just
college
plug
kid in
into
the
the
world
wall.
knows, right.
So,
Japan does them the best. They,
PE Advantium, there you go.
okay, so
Okay,
I,
that's the end of our presentation.
yes,
I
we're
did have
done.
one other thing that we might want to think about is where the owner of the property lives. So some of the communities say the owner has to live in the primary residence, but if you are actually deciding that you're
Yeah.
going to move to the secondary, but you want to rent out the primary in order.
You're right, yeah, we didn't.
So we need, because I know people, a friend of my partner's, they have a 2-family home, and they started off on the top floor, renting
That's what our
out.
people did.
And then, when they got older, they moved to the bottom
Right.
floor, and then they rented out the top floor.
Yeah.
So, it just,
Yeah, I
it's
mean, I
not
don't
actually
know.
the same thing, but it's the concept of you would be swapping residences, so we need to be able to allow
So
that.
maybe owner has to.
I think you
go
just
on
say
top.
owner, you just say owner occupied, you don't say anything about who owns which
You don't-
Right, I just want to make sure, because there are some
Right.
places which say owner must be in the primary.
Yeah,
and we
no,
definitely don't want
it,
that.
it's amazing what has actually passed the state in terms of how much you can restrict these things. It's very
And I just,
willy-nilly, it seems.
some,
So what
I
do you guys think?
think this is an
Big.
excellent presentation, thank you very much. And it, some of the things you
Ample
brought
food for
up
thought.
about being able to afford the home, using this, I had a colleague who was able to purchase a triple-decker because they were able to depend upon the rent from
Right.
those 2 other units in order to help them pay the mortgage.
Oh, interesting.
So this is a big deal. If you can buy a large house knowing that you have a dedicated income coming in, it allows people from a larger range.
Right.
People do that in town, in all that blue area.
Well, I don't know about Winchester, I just know.
They do.
that- Yeah.
There are lots of people, I've known people who've bought 2 families.
Yeah, all I know is that this is the only anecdote I have on the matter.
Right, but maybe you want a house, you know, and.
No, they'll buy a 2-family house, just,
No, I'm saying, maybe you want to live in a single-family house, but then you want the
Oh, oh.
additional income, which is
Yeah.
different than buying.
yeah, no, I understand.
Yeah.
So the first question I have is there any relation to this? Sorry, I should know the whole thing because I've read it, but I guess it doesn't get me very far. I've actually read the whole Chapter 40B, but it doesn't say anything about this. So it's really the world of mass housing, and I'm not into that level of understanding. So is there any way that Winchester scores, basically for doing anything?
Looks like you have an answer from the.
If you could please, wait,
Yeah,
could you
but
come
actually,
to the
I'd really
table?
rather it come from you, Brian, if you don't mind, because please, I would be grateful.
But are you asking if we could regulate that they're low-income units?
No, I'm just asking
What do you
how, just any implications this has with Chapter 40B. I'll leave it at that, and I really would prefer that you take it.
We can have Brian, and then we can have the member from the
Yeah,
Winchester Housing Authority.
so one, as part of the housing production plan, although it's not,
Bless you.
at least what they're talking about completely, it's not directly related to our subsidized housing index, meaning,
Right, well, that's the first.
But that's- so
No,
that-
you have to start at the beginning for me, so it's not, just say that.
well, I think we can get some more, I would imagine that you actually have a little more information.
There's a large butt in there.
Yeah. So first, I'll start off with the goals that are in any housing production plan to create more diverse housing in town that will not stave off the unsustainable growth of real estate in Winchester, but it will, the idea that there are other potential units that can, I don't know what I'm trying to
I want
use.
to really talk about does this do anything toward counting, right?
Unless
It
they are
can.
subsidized, they have to be subsidized. If they're not subsidized, then they don't count. The SHI just means they have to be subsidized, they have to be deed restricted.
That's what I thought.
I think the idea is
That
that it's
would've
much
been-
easier to create a deed-restricted accessory unit
Right.
than it is.
Boston doing it where they want it to be low-income units?
Yeah, but they do. That's one of the reasons they're using it in terms of how it actually happens.
Yeah.
Someone would have to do that, meaning that they restrict that unit just like anybody else.
With the
Is-
town.
Yeah, I mean, it would, it's technically, I mean, it goes through a town process because it goes through a lottery, whoever,
The town holds every other one.
The restriction, yeah, they would have to restrict the deed, and then, I mean, it could be sort of like a Section 8 sort of thing. Why don't we,
It's
can
not
I,
Section 8.
can I ask the member from the Housing Authority who volunteered information to come up and give us all the details? And if you could
Well, do you
please
mind then if I ask
identify
her
yourself?
questions? Because I
Well,
really.
I think this is pertinent to this question right
Yeah,
here.
no, I know.
Okay, so
If you could please identify yourself, sir.
I'm Kathy Boyle from the Housing Authority, Winchester Housing Authority. And there is a special program within DHCD for,
Do that, sorry.
sorry?
Don't do letters.
Oh, Department of Housing and Community Development, for accessory units to allow them to count on the subsidized housing inventory. So you have to meet their criteria for their particular program for the accessory units, but if you do so, they will count on the subsidized housing inventory.
Like, if we look back at Lexington, Newton, Concord, do any of them have any accessory units that have actually gone into this process?
Well, at the moment, I'm looking at a proposal on the town of Lincoln. I'm not sure if they've actually passed it, but
Come across anything?
I know there's some places down on the Cape who've done it. Let's see. I would need more time to look up the details of the program, but there's a very specific program to allow accessory units to
There you
count
go.
through the subsidized housing inventory. I think what it comes down to is that, as you said, there has to be some kind of subsidy. I think in some communities, they say if there's $25,000 that comes from the town
I have
for a unit, it will count.
What is the incentive for a homeowner to choose that rather than
Exactly.
renting it at market rate? I don't imagine that anyone would
Right.
think of that. Like, oh, I want to help the town. Who would think of that? Unless there's an incentive to the homeowner.
Well, it's going to depend on who
Financing.
it's going to depend on who the homeowner is. And the reason for that is very specific. I come at this as a parent of a person with a disability. And obviously, people with disabilities can't afford market rate units. If you assist your family member to afford a market rate unit, it reduces their government benefits. If they can afford it on their own, it doesn't reduce their government benefits. So it's going to depend on who that individual homeowner is. Whether they, I mean, some people would just want to do it because, you know, they want to be good little doobies and be good citizens and increase affordable housing in the town, but I think there's a clear personal incentive for people who are trying to provide housing for a family member with a disability
But
Or an
would-
elderly parent.
or an elderly parent.
But then, once the property is sold, that unit's tied, I just can't even fathom.
Yeah, why would you want
this.
to deed restrict it for a
Right.
future owner?
It's all going to depend. It's, you know, on who
I
that,
think we
on who
need
that
it.
person is. Generally speaking, what I would say about accessory units is you know, as you have discerned, there is a way to get them to count on the subsidized housing inventory, but it does involve leaping through this hoop. You know, and if you want it to count on the subsidized housing inventory, the homeowner is not allowed to say, I'm just going to lease it to a family member. They have to allow anyone to apply. And so it depends on what your goal is. Is your goal to get units on the subsidized housing inventory? Is your goal to meet the need for families who are trying to provide housing for persons with disabilities or elderly parents? Is your goal is simply to provide somewhat cheaper housing within the context of the town? Those are three different goals. All of them can meet at accessory units, but it depends on how you implement it. The only thing I would say about accessory units as it relates to disabilities is that there are two key features that are necessary for them to meet the needs of families trying to house family members with disabilities. One is that you need to permit 2 bedrooms, because if the individual needs a live-in caregiver through the adult foster care program, they must live in the same legal unit. Mom is not allowed to be the AFC caregiver in this unit while the individual lives in this unit. They've got, that caregiver has to be in the same unit. And the second piece that goes with that is that the definition of an owner-occupier needs to include a special needs trust. Because if you say that when title changes, well, the parents die, if they leave the property to a special needs trust, technically the title has changed, but their purpose in doing so was to provide housing for their child after their death. And that relates to one other piece, which is who lives on which side. So, for instance, I know a family in central Massachusetts where the young man has cerebral palsy. The family has already made the entire family home wheelchair accessible. They want to add on an accessory unit for them to downsize into. It doesn't make any sense for them to make it wheelchair accessible when they've already paid a huge amount of money to make the main house wheelchair accessible. And their family, the family member's going to need a live-in aid anyway, and would like to have a roommate who also uses a wheelchair. So those are the three, really it's 3 pieces. 2 bedrooms, owner-occupier has to include a special needs trust, and the person, if they have a disability, needs to be able to live in either side of the house. Otherwise, you're not going to meet the needs of the disability community. But again, that's a separate, is related, but a separate issue from, are you trying to count on the SHI, and, are you trying to just lease to a family member?
Thank you, that was really helpful.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Maureen, you had one other question you were going to say, or another point you were going to make?
Oh, a whole bunch, but I'll just leave it for now. I know
Oh, we have, sure, come on up.
so much. For those of you that I don't know, I'm Michelle McCarthy. I'm with the Historic
Could you-
Commission.
could you
Sure, Michelle
speak again?
McCarthy, Historic Commission. And also, so I'm here sort of wearing 2 hats. First, as a member of the Historic Commission, I was very interested in this. I really didn't know much about it at all, so thank you. I thought the presentation was good, and it helped me understand it. Anything that would preserve or help historic buildings, it was nice to see what Belmont did, is very much of interest to myself and to the entire commission, so I think we would love to participate if we could and work with you on this and learn more. Anything we could do to preserve historic buildings, we will partner with you and do anything we can to help on that. But I have a lot of questions as just a Winchester resident. And I hope you don't take this as criticism, but I have said this before, that I feel that there's a disconnect with people in town, planning board, and school committee. And a huge concern, and something that I think is really affecting property values in Winchester, is our schools are at overcapacity. We just passed to build a new extension on McCall. We are now probably going to have to pass an override. The families, in my neighborhood, a lot of them go to the Lynch school. My children do go to Ambrose, but the Lynch parents are excited about possibly moving forward to the new school, but very concerned that the town might reject it. And this, to me, is bringing up a lot of questions on who would live in these units, would there be more children in them? I mean, which is such a desirable community, and I don't want anyone to look at me saying that I'm not letting someone in, I'm not allowing some single mother to live here and have her kids go to school, because that could be me, and I think I understand that. We really have a problem with overcapacity. I mean, when I moved here 8 years ago, I picked Winchester because of this student-teacher ratio. And in 8 years, it has changed so drastically that if I know what I know now, I probably wouldn't have picked Winchester. I think that that's why Lexington's property values are different. They have a much better grasp. They spend more money on students. They have a much better student-teacher ratio. And this ADU is a concern on that. And maybe I'm thinking crazy and too big, because that's something that I'm worrying about.
Not to interrupt you, but this has always been the major concern
Yeah.
from previous tries as well.
And we did have that as an issue.
And I think, I love Winchester that it's so different, and I think that's great that there's so many different neighborhoods, and I'm all for diversity. I moved here from New York City and found it really hard for the first year or two. I mean, I grew up around here, but I moved away for a long time, so when I came back, I thought, what have I done? So this is nothing about diversity or criticism of that. I hope that we can have more diversity in Winchester. But wow, I have a lot of questions. I mean, parking, we had a big issue in our neighborhood when someone put a parking lot on their front lawn to, because they had an elderly grandfather, I think it was, living with them, so that they wouldn't have to basically pull in and out of driveways like we all do and all yell at our husbands to move and all of that. But that was a really big issue in my neighborhood, and I think it was in other neighborhoods, parking. So this, also, like, who's living in this garage? Like, who's living back there? Who's renting this? I think you're affecting property values of neighbors that, who's living in that garage, in that house? If you're looking at a house to purchase, I just think, this is Winchester. It's not Boston. I love Boston. I might move back there one day, but I think that we do sort of want to protect some of the charm of Winchester, and I have a lot of concerns on this. Safety for children, more cars, bad for the environment, more cars, less parking. What is the big push? Is this to get more housing? I guess I saw some of your reasoning, but why are we doing this?
One of the things that came out of the housing production plan group work that the MAPC is doing for us is that there are actually a large number of people in Winchester who could use more affordable housing. So we're talking about, I think the numbers were 1,400 people in town would be eligible for subsidized housing. So there is a need in town for more affordable housing.
Sure.
If you look at the housing that's being built now, you're finding very large units being put in with multiple bedrooms. Most of we're not building so many new homes that's going to account for all of the increase in population for children. I guess I'm going a little off topic here.
No.
But most of the kids are coming into existing homes. So I think we haven't built that many new homes.
New homes, too.
They are coming into the new homes, but they're also coming into, if you look at but if you look at the number of children coming into the system, they're not all coming in from these big homes. They're coming into existing housing stock.
Yeah.
So we have a problem with an ever-increasing cost of housing in Winchester. And it's forcing people to leave town.
Which makes the affordability
It's
factor
forcing
very
seniors who want to stay in town to leave. Their children can't afford to live in town. So there is a generational problem in terms of retaining people in Winchester. So what you find are people move in because they can't afford at the outset to move in, they send their kids through school, and if they wish to remain in town, they can't afford to, because they can't downsize, and their
My-
children can't buy. So there are a number of
I
different...
completely agree with you. My elderly parents who've lived here for 40 years just downsized, sold their house, and moved into a condo. And it took them years to find something.
Yeah, so...
But I don't know how this solves the problem, because they're not going to go move into a garage in the backyard of someone's house.
But they could have moved into your garage if that was something your family.
Oh, God, that would not have been good, but I'm just throwing that out there. Sorry. No. I love my parents, thank you.
But the point is...
And this is on TV.
The point is...
What was your maiden name again?
There are a variety of family situations.
There are,
which
and
would-
I really do want to speak for the seniors,
but-
because I hear this from so many people, that I think my parents were so lucky. It's really hard, and I love this idea, and I'm all for helping the seniors. I completely agree with you. I do not think this solves it. I think we need to be promoting developers that would build more senior housing that are, wheelchair accessible on one level, that someone else shoveling for you. I mean, I just don't think this solves that.
This is
my opinion.
part of the solution that I see it. I don't think there is a single solution, because developers are not going to build senior housing that's affordable. Even all of the above 55 housing that's going on at Winding Farm, we're talking about one and a
I heard
half
those
million.
prices, and
They're enormous.
I know.
This town will never see that happen.
But how can the planning board help that?
Well, that's a separate question, and that's one of the reasons we're going through a number of different ways of looking at the picture. Now, one of the concerns is we're going to flood the town with a lot of these units, and at least the statistics seem to indicate that that doesn't happen, and that even if you scattered 100 units over several years in town, you're not going to be increasing things dramatically. So there is a fear that all of a sudden we're going to get thousands of ADUs, which will change the population. That hasn't happened. We do have data from all these other towns, which do have incredibly restrictive requirements on their ADUs, so that sort of biases the data.
The data has to be
Yes.
in with what's...
Right, but the point is, there are legitimate concerns, but whether they're borne out by the data is another question. So I'm much more worried about tear-downs increasing school children population. I'm much more concerned about people who are moving out, who are living in large homes and can't stay there, and they have to sell, and a family moves in. That's what we're seeing. I mean...
So let me add to that. When I see the families leave, and I'm in that cohort, I'm totally there, and I can't tell you, probably more people leave than stay in town. But what they're doing is they're wanting to take the money out of the Winchester house, and they're heading to the borders, and they're buying a comparable, or actually it's not comparable, I have to say that they are downsizing too typically, but they're not a lot. They typically, if they're my age, they still want a house, and so they're totally not in the ADU at all, but they want a house, and so they're going to Woburn, they're going to Stoneham, they're going to Medford, and they are. Or, well, if they're a little bit older, I won't pick on certain people we know, and my parents did it too, then they really will be looking for the single level elevator service. But the ADU, I've also, from a different generation, I don't want to name names, but somebody I know and love, you can ask me after the meeting's over and we're off camera, but definitely has lived in that setup, and in Los Angeles, actually, but it was, it's a young person's concept. It's really, I just don't think, despite, you can maybe show me examples, but overall, that's where young people go. It's just the
The young
reality.
professional, you mean, would move in and...
If you call them, I guess.
if
I
I-
better stop talking, right? You don't know who we're talking about.
If I could convince my mom to move 30 years ago, she's much too old to move right now, and I was able to put something on the side of my house, she would have moved in.
Okay.
So
But
there, I mean,
talking
all
about-
I understand, but I
We
think
were looking for a place like that.
what's important to
Ended
realize,
up in a great place.
I think what's important to realize is our stories are our stories. They're not everyone's
I have
stories.
one story.
They're not, you have many stories,
Oh.
but they reflect your friends. Everyone here comes from a very different place, so we need solutions which fit multiple things, so we have to cut this
Well, let me
thing
go to
off.
one other
Well, I
question.
I will
Yeah,
be
did
looking
you-
forward
did you
to
finish?
following through. No, I just want to say good luck. I think it's going to be I'm not trying to be mean. I've been on town meeting, you've been on town meeting for a long time, I'm like, this will be an interesting
This is a
one. I mean,
long
there's-
haul.
there's
We're not
no
looking
way.
at, this like,
We're not looking for.
I want to follow up with that too, and you did mention, because I'm actually quite passionate about the tear down issue, and to me, there's limited bandwidth on any board, so it's just time that we invest. There's also our master plan and what we're learning from our master plan, so we're working in this interactive process, and we want to keep going with the community, so there's community input, there's the sort of ability of our staff and our board to put time in. There's also that we've had this amazing, yes, Brian, amazing run of success in the town meeting, and if we're climbing a mountain, to me, I'm just just really convinced that the tear down issue is something a lot of people care about, and they would like those, the houses that we're losing, and we have been mapping them, and I hope we can bring that agenda. I'd like to bring in the tear down map, and it had been updated pretty regularly.
so that's a separate issue
No,
from
it's
this.
not separate,
Yes, it is
because it
actually,
has to
because
do
we're
with-
running late now.
Well, we're running late, but then my point is, though, that we should be, which mountain are we climbing?
Yeah,
And
I got it,
tear
but
downs might be-
that's a separate issue.
It relates to
It's
the
a separate, but
affordable
it's still-
housing.
It's
in
a,
that.
it's
No,
a, it's a
related.
pertinent issue, but right now, we're talking about ADUs. So we have time for
Thank you for
one
your time.
last really short comment.
Thanks for
Thank you very much.
Yeah, the comment is simply that it depends on how you write it. You can write these things in terms of the question of the children in the schools. You can write it so that it's specifically for the elderly and people with disabilities. You can, obviously, the elderly population is one thing, disabled population is another. The original version of this, we had support from the Limitless Veterans. And in terms of parking, some of the language that was in that and has been in the state bill is basically saying one additional parking spot. So it does not need to be that, right, exactly.
Okay, thank you. So,
That was a great presentation.
yes, it was excellent. So why don't we move quickly on to the A&R, and we can get this done very quickly?
Yes, this should be quick.
I think.
Opponent is here, but I'm just gonna
We
go
don't need
here.
it.
You guys should be very well versed in this. This has, based on a petition of Whitehorse condominiums and the abutter. The A&R shows the transfer of land that we already have recommended both variances for a transfer of land of 2,300 square feet to 20 Grove Place from 22 Grove Place as Lot A. All the necessary submission requirements have been met, and I recommend endorsing the A&R.
Okay, so do we have a motion on the floor?
Will we endorse the A&R?
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
How easy was that?
That was easy.
Get those short.
Okay, so
Yeah, keep us
while
moving.
Brian is pulling that out, I just want to mention two things. I guess I can kind of say them, maybe I have to move into action items, with the action items.
Deb gets the top line.
So we're going to move now to the fall town meeting articles, which I think needs our full attention. And
Brett.
we really
That's all I
are,
have.
so we've got 10 minutes on this, because the one in front of us tonight, I think, is not controversial.
So here, I had 7. I know you guys sent it as well, but.
Do we do the paper any longer, or extra text?
I do, but we don't have to sign them, because we scan,
Okay.
we scan it.
Remind Heather that it's just a courtesy usually to let the chair be the top line.
Of course.
Well, I could just sign it first, and then there's no problem.
Not a law, but it's, you get to have the honor.
That works.
I got it before people.
Well, you're better at it than I.
No, I don't know,
It has to
Betsy.
be a
Is that-
marker.
It's gotta be a marker.
Oh, that's right.
Well, now it works.
I got it, you just wiggle it around.
I don't think we're done with these, what?
What you need to do is sign on the straight line. And
Is there an order here? Is that
No,
what you skipped?
well,
No, it just, Diab should be first in that.
normally the
That's all that
chair is
matters.
first. Just remember, your signature is posterity, so in 100 years, people will want to be able to read your
I've
signature.
seen my signature come back on plans. Yeah, it's a little spooky.
Well, every time I see my name in the
I signed
newspaper,
that
it's
thing.
spooky. I say, who is that guy? That's a strange name. Okay, so
Very, very
tonight,
can go home.
We are talking about, we only have 10 minutes because we don't have much to discuss tonight.
Okay.
We have a full thing on our agenda next week for FARs, so we're going to have Dennis Carnone come and talk to us.
I would back up to Article 2.
Yeah, I just want to mention,
Oh, sorry,
we're just going to talk about that next week, so we're not talking about it tonight.
Correct.
Article 2 is the dormers.
Yes.
Right, so what we had started this conversation, and then we kind of abruptly stopped it. I went back through my notes from our last meeting, and there wasn't a lot to use, other than everyone felt that we were only talking about dormers on the half-story, on the 2.5-story level. Nobody's trying to regulate any type of dormer on the second floor.
Correct.
It's the
Or
half-story above the second floor.
Right.
We're not calling it a third floor, I don't know what we're calling it. And
Better not be doing
so,
it.
an idea of 50% seemed reasonable. I found out from the building department for what they tell people to, because there's really no restriction on it at all, but what they tell people, they say, well, just bring it in 3 feet on each side. So that's what's been happening at, kind of right now.
Can we just discuss that?
Wait, I thought where we were with this is Heather had sent around the Cambridge guidelines. I thought we were gonna talk about what we liked from that before we
Good.
had language, because there was a lot of really great detail and pictures and
We can certainly
I
do
didn't
that.
think we were ready to,
Yeah, I
I
agree
didn't
with
think we
you.
were this far.
Okay.
Also, this link, I don't think is relevant.
Yeah, no, that was specifically for when we were looking at whether or not to consider something a part of the gambrel roof as a shed, as a dormer or not.
Right.
But you're right, we can
We
do
are nowhere near finished with this language, just so you know. This was,
Okay, I
this
just
was,
thought we were gonna.
Oh, I'm
Oh, yeah.
glad you said that, yeah, because
Yeah,
this
no.
No,
is,
totally open. I was just trying to get
Because there
people,
was so much more detail. There were
Yeah.
things
Yes.
about setting it back from the front plane of the house and
Yeah.
the ratio of the width of the window to
Right.
the other surface, and there was just,
yeah, yeah.
nothing, but basically, there was nothing that I could get from my notes that there was no there was not even a
We didn't talk
preference,
about it.
there was not even a
Yeah.
preference for anything, other than it seems like 50% seems to be reasonable. That
So-
was-
theirs were
Exactly.
actually guidelines.
Yeah.
so why don't we move on to the discussion that you want to have?
Yeah.
So why don't we, can we get the Cambridge one up?
But as Brian's working on that, 50% even with, those are like this, traditional gabled dormers, 50% of a roof, there
That's a
would still
lot.
be a lot of
It
big
is.
dormers. So
I've been
I-
looking at the ones in my neighborhood, and it does seem like the most there were, like originally on a historic house, that's the most there would have been. And if you added up the linear length, it would be
You
less
think-
than half of.
Less than half, that's my view. 50 is high, I think.
Well, less than half is
But
50%.
broken
No,
up
but I
too,
would
so the
go to-
Cambridge one had to do with
Oh,
breaking
it's
them
bad,
up.
I want to
You
go
don't
back to
have,
that.
like, one
I
big
just
one that's
wanted to say,
50%.
I would
Exactly.
go to 40% or something if I,
Well, why don't we take a look?
if we were sticking with that.
Okay, where are we?
Table-
Mr. Brian.
Shed dormers.
Here we
Wow,
are,
they've
so,
got-
Yeah, no, hang on, actually, go back a sec if you don't mind. So is this in guidelines for their, whoever's their council, who's doing the special, city council, or who does their permit granting for residential?
I believe it's the planning board,
The planning board, ha
strangely enough.
strangely enough.
Imagine.
They're probably
Why did
more-
I ask?
If I had to guess, it
See where-
prepared to help property owners and the design and building professionals working with them to create dormers would increase the living, oh no,
Oh,
problem's
so-
coming before the ZBA.
Yeah.
For
Okay.
dormer additions requiring review under, it's Somerville, I'm guessing then, that is planning in that case.
Which is a really important.
But this is only for those requiring review.
Correct.
That our zoning board, just as an observation in one sentence, our zoning board only has guidelines that deal with procedure. The guidelines of our zoning board does not deal with design issues such as this, and.
We're going to be talking
really,
about that
that's
at
why I want to make that
9:20.
point. And maybe we want to come back to this?
We have an agenda item coming up right after this.
Yeah, no, but that's why I want
Oh,
to
yeah,
make sure
oh,
it's
yeah.
here, with pictures.
Okay, where are we?
Okay, so in terms, shed dormers, so they're talking about setbacks to this front and side walls.
That actually makes a difference. They're talking about not having it be like at the same face as the
Yeah, I
house,
agree.
where the house just looks really weird and tall. There's
Yeah.
one like that I've run by, it's so weird.
You need more paths, you'll find more weird. There's weird everywhere.
So these are
Weird
really
is,
complex.
Weird is proliferating.
I was just summarizing.
I mean, yeah, it sounded like this was an outside job from the city of Cambridge, in terms of how detailed this
Remember
is.
who's a city councilor now?
Well, so my question, and to be efficient with our time, is are we going to be able to digest all of this, or what is
Well,
it?
maybe go to the pictures, we can just talk about the pictures.
That's a good idea.
Those are good, aren't they?
So saying the front wall of the dormer flush with the main wall underneath is not recommended, see
Yeah.
figure 6 for preferred.
And so Heather's
So they have,
thinking
like,
like a
yes and
designer, and I'm
nos.
totally with you, and I love that. At the same time, I'm wondering, what
For
triggers,
setbacks.
you know, I'm thinking lawyer, what triggers
That's over here,
this?
so I did see that, that
So
was
we're
important.
thinking like lawyers here with, or ZBAs, we've got a zoning,
So,
we've
here
got
it is.
something coming up, and what triggers it
So-
in the zoning bylaw.
This is what they say. While these guidelines apply to all building types, meaning that everyone should be looking at these, is what they're saying, whether you have review or not, or anything.
Right.
But,
No, it doesn't actually say anything
no,
there.
it talks about,
Nope.
Up,
It sucks.
I
adherence
think
to
it's
the
for variance or
city
special
business.
permit.
no, here it is. So it has to do with dormer additions requiring review under zoning or in before or after,
Yeah, so we need,
or either of the two neighborhood conservation district
Know
commissions for
about
design
those.
review. So they have NCDs, which are our version of
Rangeland,
heritage
our
districts.
heritage.
So they're saying that it's done through that
or,
for design review, and,
no, you're missing the first part before the or. It's coming before the BZA.
It says anyone coming before,
BZA for dormer additions requiring review under the zoning ordinance or before either of the two.
yeah, so we're trying to say, well, Maureen asked what triggered it.
Right.
It's two things. It's something related to, you needed a variance or a special permit for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But hang on,
And then it's
my
also.
impression is maybe we do need to peel this back. This is great, and thank you for pushing us to look at this. I'd like to know what's in their zoning, if it's, because our zoning just brings you in front if you're moving into, say, the side yard setback or something, but is there something
Okay.
else in Cambridge?
So
And maybe
that's-
you could email the
You mean
planner.
specifically dormer related
yeah,
and
what
not,
is the
and
language?
So
my
let's,
guess is, yeah.
so
well,
that's a second,
I guess.
that's
That
an
could-
action
that could
item.
be
In
a
other
lot of
words,
things that
is there a
trigger-
different kind of a zoning bylaw we should be considering to get
get
at this?
people to
And
come
then
to
we
us.
add this and our friendly meeting with
Well,
our ZBA.
What it says is they basically, anything that requires a special permit.
Right, but there may be other
she's
special
saying maybe
permit
there's
requirements.
language.
Yes, so can I make a suggestion, please? We don't know the answer to that, so Brian, please go off and find the answer to that. What we can talk about now is design.
Yes.
So why don't we concentrate on pretty pictures and design in terms of what we like and what we don't like? Because the zoning, how we bring them in front of us is a separate question. So what in this document do we want to pull out in terms of looking at the pictures and trying to understand what is good and what is bad? And I'm just going to scroll.
All good.
I like their idea of doing yes and no examples. It's kind of like what we were doing with the
Right.
duplex.
So that
What we
should-
like, what we don't like.
So I assume that's the full width of the house. So this is horrible, because that's obviously more than half.
That's the side. One thing they say in here is that they prefer for them to be on the sides or the rear of the property and towards the back. So really, you're not changing the look of the house
Yeah.
if you can avoid it.
Good point, because these are dormer additions, we have to keep that in
The
mind
signs
too.
around here, we get ones that are right in the front and
So
stuff.
the question I have is also, though, with a lot of the worst offenders are new construction,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
so that won't get us there.
Well,
but
we did have
to keep in mind.
we did have an example just a few weeks ago where someone wanted to pop up dormers on both sides of their gable. So you would.
It wasn't new.
It wasn't new.
Oh,
It was
I'm
an
thinking-
existing house, and it was, the gable was facing the street, and they wanted to pop up dormers on both sides. And those are the ones the neighbors hate, because they really change the roof line, and they make it look like it's a third story. So I think the ones on the side are perhaps most egregious, because they really make the building look alive.
Only, but not if it's pushed towards the
My
back.
point is,
yeah.
they're saying, try to push them towards the back.
Right, but this example here is horrible,
Well,
because,
so back up, what
They're
are
showing
the,
set
That-
it, this
that's-
picture is just
These
showing
are-
set it back
a third
on the side.
Should we be thinking about dormers in terms of new construction versus existing buildings?
I don't think so. I would imagine.
Well,
that-
hang on.
yeah.
Okay, the reason is with an existing building, it's designed in a certain way with a facade that makes a certain amount of sense. So any dormers, you don't, well, I suppose the most likely would be, what if the roof slopes down and then they pop something in the front? That could be more offensive, and that's what Cambridge is trying to deal with, as Heather said. So existing buildings have an existing, hopefully well-designed facade, and the new dormers can really wreck it. On the other hand, we do have issues, as we all seem to understand, with new construction in dormers, and so that's why I'm saying maybe we want to be thinking about them in two different ways.
I think that's an excellent idea, because they are going to be very different. Certainly the visual impact will be such, especially since you're changing an existing building, and it's going to, so how do we differentiate between those two? Do we need to see examples of newly built buildings with beautiful dormers?
We saw that one on the same street as Richardson. I thought it was
Or was the whole
it was a
length?
newer one. It was nearly the whole length on one side and like
Yeah.
80% on the
I'm
other.
going to tell you that at least one neighbor complained bitterly to me about it.
With good reason.
I was shocked when I saw it.
I voted against it.
Because it was, well, this is the
Oh,
one,
that one
Oh,
didn't come
the other
before
one.
you.
no, this one was done by right, and the exterior of the building is beautiful, what they've done, but they have put in two dormers on both sides. They are offset, they are
This
not
is on
towards.
Richardson?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the one I
Got
had
it.
Brian take the photos of, it's
Yeah.
the
It
shingles.
was like
And
a
that's the,
light
wait,
cedar
okay, there's
wood
another
looking-
one on Richardson that's new construction, and even our
But-
good building commissioner said that looked like a dormer to him, third story, and the ZBA approved it. And
That
it's
was,
just this
that
mega
was, that
silo
was,
thing that's
I
flat
think
on
that was
top.
on, was that on Richardson? That's
It's
the,
Richardson also, yes, sorry.
oh,
Oh, yuck.
wait, I'm sorry, the building we're talking about is on Water Street.
On Water Street.
The one, yeah, Richardson is, that's one, because I live, I walked by the one on Water Street, because I live 2 blocks from it. So, but in any case,
Well, but we should think
So-
of Richardson, because
well, yeah, Richardson is the one where we had the modern
modern.
with a third. So I'm not sure actually where we go with the new design buildings, with the newly built buildings. How do we draw up, how do we know when a dormer
It
works?
would be so different, I think we should just think about it generally and then decide.
Yeah, I mean,
which
there's a
things
general
would
aesthetic.
apply
I think there's a
which.
general aesthetic. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what I said,
Well,
personally, I don't
because-
think there should be a difference.
No, because I
but-
think I'm okay, you can argue, or convince me, so I'm not saying no, but I am saying, with the existing building, you do have something that was maybe designed, even if it's a, builder design, but it was designed and it makes some sense. So I would think that you'd want to be pretty, you'd want to have pretty strong controls against any dormer on the main facade because it's an existing
You're
coherent.
saying that there would be more limitations on
Yeah,
existing
yeah,
buildings
yeah.
than new buildings.
Whereas you could certainly, I have no question that you could design dormers on the front of, even a 2.5-story building on the front that can make sense. But there, you may want to have a little bit more, and probably, first issue is the street facade. After that, the sides do count, absolutely, and the rear, because they're abutters, but it's a different issue there.
Generally, I'm not, this is more of a question, but I'm not really thinking that there's too many issues that people in general have with the doghouse dormers, like, a standard, it's really these shed dormer, and here, they're only talking about shed dormers and
I can
gambrel
show
dormers.
you a horrible dog style.
I'm sure, well, usually it's the size of them that make it
Wait, they do
good
have those,
looking
you
or
mean
bad
the ones
looking.
that are like this, the pop-out ones?
Yeah.
Keep
There is-
scrolling.
there is
are
one
some-
example.
It has to do with the width of the window, that.
So that's still a shed dormer, that's still a shed dormer.
Yeah, let's scroll down to the doghouse ones.
Shed. These are all shed, like
I
something
thought
like.
they had some on the front of the house.
Yeah, I think they.
Gable
oh, here.
dormer.
Well, that there.
Yeah, that would be a gable
That's
dormer.
gable dormer,
There's
yeah.
one.
That's
And
definitely what it is.
those can, oh, no, those are nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's,
So it is, so.
can you pop over to Salem Street and street map? I can show you a really bad example of a doghouse dormer.
We don't have to do that.
No, we don't have to, it's okay.
Well, the point is that it is a very long and narrow
I
tunnel.
remember it. Right. You
And they're
should
just-
saw it.
They have to, I think they might have something about the depth.
Yeah, so we need to make sure that the depth to the width is appropriate. So if you're gonna make it deep, you gotta make it wide, but you can't make it too wide. It has to be just right.
Well, even so, even these gable style, this is not exactly
Those are called hip, by the way.
They're calling them gable.
No, on the bottom it's.
Oh,
hip.
sorry.
Well, the roof is a hip roof, is it?
Roof pitch.
Is
The
a,
bottom there, that one's a hip.
Yeah.
yeah, that's,
This is gable dormers.
The main roof is
the main roof is a hip roof.
It says gable dormers
It does,
added
but
in
it's all right,
combination
it's a
such as
hip.
triplets
It
should be
doesn't matter,
arranged
it's a hip.
symmetrically.
Well, whatever it's called, those look okay.
It looks nice, yeah.
It's okay.
Well,
But that's also on a very steep pitched roof. The problem, if you get a much shallower pitch roof, then it's going to turn into one of those really
it'll be
long
much bigger,
tunnels.
yeah, for sure.
So we have to take into account the pitch of the roof, the width of the dormer, and the depth of the dormer. So Brian, can you come up with a nice formula for that?
Pitch of roof, depth of dormer, length of dormer, or width of dormer,
Width of
yeah.
Boy, I'd like to do this fall.
I think that maybe they have it as a ratio of the width to the depth, and then you don't have to deal with the roof pitch, because that,
We need an architect.
Same
It's the
thing.
golden ratio. That's what
Well,
it's-
I was actually thinking that this,
Pitch.
well, I was thinking that in conjunction next week with Dennis, that this could also be a
Yes.
Yeah,
question.
definitely.
We could ask
I think
him.
that would be really helpful.
But I would hope that in the meantime, even if he's sitting on the city council, could you just email their planner and ask what's in the zoning?
Yeah, no, I have that as an
Anything.
action, I have that as an item.
It's good. So to me, I'd still think maybe it could be in the zoning that it's pretty flat out that we're not on over 2 stories, that dormers, we don't want dormers on that. If it's a 2.5-story building, we just don't want dormers on the main facade, period. And new dormers. It just
So
has to do with
we're-
this.
well, maybe they should just have to come to us, because if there were some that looked in context like they could have been there. I've seen some nice houses that do that, where I've tried to figure out were those there originally or not, and I can tell if it's like they're slate, I can tell they're original, but otherwise it can be hard.
I think that would require them to come in, and the problem with the.
Special
Under
permit
what?
then?
We would have to
It would be,
create-
I mean, that's a,
Well, they can put them on the sides and they can put them on the rear, and we're talking, what if it's just 2.5 story? I mean, that's a big house, so maybe it's okay. I
Well,
mean,
let's,
So you're saying write something that says if they're on the front, you have to come to us.
yeah. Main
do we
facade.
do this
that's
for?
I think that's a high bar, I think it's a high bar to have it,
How many do you think we even get? I don't.
Well,
I couldn't tell you.
Well, I don't know.
I would have to look through the building department records
on
to
the
see how
main
many people have
facade.
done. Yeah, I mean,
Well,
you see it a lot.
I do have a concern, and that is, do we have precedent for putting in particular design considerations before forcing them to come into site plan review?
Yeah,
Yes, yeah, you can do that. I think it's more appropriate through site
I
plan
didn't
review
bring
than
my zoning bylaw.
than special
Yeah.
permit.
Yes.
That's what I was trying, and the way that,
This
the way this goes, it's like, if you're in front of the ZBA, all this is fair game.
Right,
Is
right,
basically,
right.
that's
But that's what
that's,
we're doing with garages, almost, right?
well,
Like if we're talking to you about it, then we want your garages on the side.
I mean, whatever the guidelines, I'm just trying to say the
That had
structure.
to do with the, going into the side yard setback.
Yeah, that's a
So
side yard
if
setback.
they don't go into the side yard setback,
This is more of, yeah, this is more of a, it's really,
No, I'm saying we talk about it if it happens to come before us for another reason.
We certainly
Yes.
comment on it
Yeah, that's what I mean.
vociferously.
It's like we have
But-
opinions if it's here anyway.
and just like, and so engineering can only enforce these infiltration systems under a special permit, but they would obviously love to enforce them. They would love for everything.
Everything that comes out.
To have an infiltration
But
system.
Heather, on the garage issue, right now, there's no criterion, so that's where you would want to add that. It's a lot better. We do get review, and we can comment on anything that has to do with neighborhood character and all that, but it's better to have it spelled out specifically.
One
I
of-
agree.
One of the things we need to think about is how much of this goes into guidelines like this and
Well,
how
that's
much of
what I
those
said.
goes into the bylaws. And that would be a neat segue into the next thing on our agenda if we're done here, but I don't know. Are we done here?
I mean-
What more can we accomplish with dormers this evening?
I would just ask if you would also try Lexington, maybe or maybe your listserv.
I'm pretty sure Concord has, I'm pretty sure we looked at Concord's for the CBD when we were doing the CBD
Yes.
thing.
On dormers?
I'm quite sure.
On
Yeah, I
dormers
think we
specifically,
did.
yeah.
And you had Rockport, was it? It was sort of an unusual.
It was a
choice.
unusual one. I think it was Rockport.
Was that a zoning or was that a special?
I'm pretty sure that
or
was, I'm pretty sure
guidelines?
that was a bylaw.
I guess if you could prepare material for us, actually material.
So we know how people are doing it?
Heather, you've set a really high bar with your presentation tonight. We're going to
Yeah, we
expect...
need that for dormers.
Yeah, we need that for dormers.
Yeah.
Well, I think Heather Van Mering might be interested in dormers as well, so I'm not gonna assign her an action item when she's not here, which is usually what I like to do, because they can't complain.
That's right, because then you can't complain.
That's right, you can't not do it.
Well, I think
But,
she and I both plan on taking more photos.
right.
Of ones we
Well,
liked and ones we didn't.
I think what would be useful is to look at this one and try to distill the essence of what we really want out of it, because these are far too detailed to be in the zoning bylaws, but they're great for guidelines. So we need to figure out what's the essence we need in the guidelines.
And then you can put it in.
And then we'll put, or, no, I'm sorry, the essence we need to put into the bylaws.
Well,
Exactly.
that may
Yeah,
not be the essence, there may be something quite
No.
different.
I mean, that's what we need to, right now, we
think we
don't
can
seem to
start
have
from
a,
that.
we don't have a good concept of what the essence is. I think we have a few ideas, and maybe, so I don't know, it would be really nice to get this in by fall town meeting, but we have had this goal of trying
We
to
just
get,
keep moving forward, I don't know.
yeah, we'll just keep moving forward
There's a
on
few
this.
that we know that we're gonna get there, and I think this one is, I keep working,
Oh,
I keep
if we
working,
find-
we
If we
just
find
keep
out
doing,
what
and
Cambridge
we-
is doing to get to the guidelines,
Well, I
Yeah.
think,
it's just
Well,
easy.
Well, we're gonna have another, next week, we're gonna
Well,
have
so we touch on it
another
with
fall
Dennis
town
here,
meeting
so,
articles, and we're talking to Dennis. I'm sorry, I can't read and talk at the same time. So, I guess we are moving on, because I don't think there's anything else in these town meeting articles. I should mention that we're gonna be drafting a letter for the GBD 2 and 3.
Butters.
The abutters, we're going to be drafting a letter to the abutters, letting them know that we will be having public meetings about this.
Yeah.
And these are not going to be hearings, there will actually be meetings where people will be able to come and talk to us. And that will be going out to the abutters, the property owners, and to town meeting members
And
from
next week?
precinct.
What are we talking about right now?
Sorry.
Article 8.
Hey, how did you get that pretty picture? I only got black and white. This one here, where we, so Brian and I will be working on it next week, hoping to get it out by the end of next week.
Definitely.
And
And when's the town meeting, when does the warrant close?
So, it is, I'll tell you, so, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, probably September 28th
Yeah.
or 26th, one of those.
Can you?
Yeah, no, it's definitely that week. I don't write it in you can write it sometime in that week, but I don't know.
So-
I know it's usually between 6 and 7 weeks before town meeting.
To do this, for the meeting in September, like, we're basically, we've got the 14th, master plan is the 21st, we're all away, I think, I am certainly, and then.
You're talking about August.
Yeah, so then Labor Day is September 3rd.
Yeah.
The primary election is September 4th, so we
Correct.
won't be meeting then.
Correct.
Don't forget to vote,
So
folks.
I would guess our next meeting, September 11th, and we've got the town meeting warrant closing September 28th.
Also, September 11th, I'm nearly positive that that is the first time that our master plan consultant will be presenting, like, will be coming to a planning board meeting, so.
Okay.
That hasn't been finalized, and that's why I haven't told you yet, but.
We should hold this
I would
September,
yeah,
it seems to me September 11th, we're gonna meet.
What is
think-
the status with her?
So right now, we've sent her, we're in a lawyer loop, so we've sent her the contract. She's about to get back to us, it's summer, but we're moving forward, it's working, and we're just waiting to button it up.
So where I'm heading with this is that in that letter, I love the master plans, like, yes.
But that's not the whole night.
I love the
She's not
master
gonna be there the
plan,
whole
but
night.
Can we actually commit to discuss, bringing the people in who are inviting them?
It's a meeting, not a hearing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
as a meeting.
Yeah, let's just put it
Put it
down.
on.
Great.
Why don't we put it down?
Yes.
Is
What
everyone,
meeting is it? I feel like I'm not
The abutter, okay, back up. So when if you don't mind turning around, Heather, do you see all that stripe that's kind of orange that heads north?
Oh, yeah,
I can also put it up
That's
here.
Main Street going, that's North Main
Heather has
Street.
it right here. So
Oh, well,
we
that's
need
Skippy.
we're going to notify, we want to have a meeting with the residents of those neighborhoods to let them know we're deciding to, we want to change the single properties from commercial back to residential.
We're talking about the ones that are one
Yes.
lot
Yeah,
behind.
one lot.
Right, so not the ones along Main Street, it's the residential parcels that are one-off there, there's commercial bleeding in to that
So
neighborhood.
this would be a opportunity for the neighborhoods and everyone involved to
And
come
their-
in, to get their
feedback.
opinion. This would not be part of our formal hearings for the articles which come later, because they haven't been submitted.
So you would tell
We're thinking
everyone
about,
who lives there?
that we're thinking about this, what do you think?
Yeah.
So this would be going out to
Asking
abutters,
people's opinion.
owners, abutters, and town meeting members from precincts
Oh, good.
8,
Yes.
and I think it's just, is it just 8? Where's the
We'll
division?
figure that out.
Yeah, we'll figure that out.
Well, we have to.
So next week, Brian and I will be writing this up, and we could send out a draft to the board if they're interested. It's not going to be,
I don't worry about a draft, I'm thinking, can you also get the abutters to those parcels? I mean, I
You know,
love-
we have all, yeah, so we
There's
have
a-
all, so I have a list of all the parcels in the GBD 2 and 3, and then I have a sub-list of the ones that are one-off, and I
Good.
looked to see what those properties actually are, not what they're zoned. Obviously, I know they're zoned GBD 2.
And while
but,
you're
you
at
know.
it, may as well, as a formal invitation, our friends on the Housing Partnership Board, could you invite all of them? Although this is not affordable housing like Chapter 40B, this is certainly, these are some of our more affordable housing units in
the
Winchester.
Housing Partnership Board is actually interested in a lot more than
I know it
40B.
is. No, I know that. That's why I'm saying. I'm
actually
the one who
is,
said I
yeah.
want them invited, so
They are-
I would
they're-
hope that they could be supportive of this. Actually, could you also invite the Historical Commission? Many of these two families are Victorian period. And in fact, they were documented, I think, by the BU, some BU graduate students.
Well, there's some beautiful homes right
Yeah.
off on that.
Absolutely.
So as you think about preparing for that, maybe, I don't want to volunteer John Clemson, but he might be able to also offer some, just what the, at least talk to him about it if you would, or email.
can always
'Cause
kinda give a
he'll-
little
There was some
perspective of-
survey work, no, but it's more than that. There was some survey forms done of the North End with BU graduate students under a greater density, actually.
Will someone be talking about why we're doing this? Like
Yes.
introducing the topic and why?
I will introduce it, because it's destroying neighborhoods.
Yeah.
That's essentially it. Once you get.
Oh, it's
what-
a-
What happens is that even if you build a residential unit, which has happened in one instance on Richardson, they can build it out to, they can put a third floor on top, and they can, the setbacks are much
No,
smaller.
no, I understand why we're talking.
Oh,
about
yeah,
this.
there will be an
Context
introduction to
for-
them, yeah.
Yes, it's
Yes.
protection for homeowners is the
Yeah,
general reason.
yeah. So, yes, there will be an introduction. Thank
Yeah,
you.
so historic and
But-
housing.
Yep.
Great.
Okay.
There's one thing I think about with those properties is just the scale, like not
Yeah.
even the
Absolutely.
preservation, but that what you're preserving is a scale that
Yeah.
would be gone.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
good point.
And
And I'd love some pictures, because it should
I
be.
think for
Sure.
something like this, I think.
could-
it-
I could-
we'll
There's
come
that
up with a
one that's
presentation.
behind- What was that one we were talking about by the bagel land? Is that Water Street?
Oh, no.
No, not one, Canal,
No.
There's one with like
Clark.
those tiny
Clark,
houses.
Clark.
And there
That's
was,
and then there are a few through
A
very large
duplex.
duplexes,
Yeah,
that's
it was
Clark's,
Clark.
that's
We can-
Clark
we
and
can-
Hemingway.
we can certainly-
That would be a good photo.
We can take pictures of existing units right there, as well as what's the bad things that have happened, and just, what happens when, when you have a plumbing, it's just historic, it's there. JJ Loftus is one section down on their street, so essentially, it's plumbing. And then you'd go down a residential street, and you just see plumbing, because they got the front on Main Street and the next lot in, so it really changes the neighborhood. But, so that's
Good.
going on, with that is the fall town meeting article. So
And
now,
it's September 7th,
so that's on September 11th.
11th, yeah, 11th.
So we're
I spoke.
everyone here will be there, and hopefully Heather von Marion can make it as well. Next thing I want to get to very quickly is this concept of a planning board handbook. And so the idea behind this would be, it's something both for the planning board and for town residents and for developers, so it would be a public document. I see it as part of our outreach to the town. It would essentially tell the town what our mission is in terms of what we hope to accomplish. And also, it would go into specific details on certain design guidelines. It also, for instance, have the Section 53G thing that, I think it was Concord who had that, was it Concord?
I'm sorry, I don't know the question.
Someone,
What, 53?
There was
We've used that numerous times.
yeah, but there was an actual, there was a document which specified, which was guidelines, which I thought you brought that up, Maureen. It was about how how it was going to be implemented. It was a really nice document, it was a one-pager.
We have a one-pager.
Yeah, but the one that I thought, it was
done a
from
while ago.
Concord, I believe, and it was really well done, and
We've had, because we've subscribed to that for,
Right, but no, this was actually laying out, this was I'll try to find it again, it's probably somewhere, I saw it in your office, Brian.
because it's not.
It was ours.
No, it wasn't ours.
All right, well, the one that I have right here
It's referencing.
is the Winchester Planning Board Rules and Regulations for Hiring Consultants under MGL Chapter 4453G, revisions accepted 2006. So we actually have this.
Yeah.
Well, we have that, but
But I don't know what
there was another one from,
Something else, right?
yeah, well, he's talking about a different town.
it was a different town, it was beautifully laid out, and I thought it had something to do with 53G, and it was a set of guidelines, and I could have sworn, and obviously my memory's failing me, that Maureen, you were the one who brought it forward.
1, 2, 3.
Because I remember being in Brian's office speaking about it, so, with you and he present, so I have a
We have a
vivid imagination.
6-paragraph document.
Yeah, but it was an old one. Okay, so in any case, the whole point would be this handbook would capture those things. It would capture our policies, whatever they are. I mean, right now, we don't actually have a policy handbook, so.
Yeah, we do, by the way, have a hearing rules.
We do,
Right.
another
And it's kind of a
one-page,
random
another.
sheet of paper,
But
yeah.
there are also policies about how we want this board to work in terms of notification of board members of things, how we want the standard things that make this committee work properly, just written down, so we can, so new members can walk in and not be completely confused week after week as we do weird things. So that would be part of it. And so the real thing that I would love input on all of those things, but which parts of the zoning bylaws we need to provide guidelines for. So those are the things that, we've talked about how the zoning board doesn't have their own guidelines. It's our job to provide them if they don't have them. That's what we have to do. So where do we think, and this is one of the reasons we talked earlier about going over the zoning board's guidelines and trying to identify areas which we think don't represent our bylaws well, and
Right.
the reason for doing that is to change our bylaws so that they're more easily interpreted, and also to provide guidelines so that people can understand them. So that's where I would love to get input that would go into this document. So this is a long-term project, but I hope we can work on it
I hope
piecemeal.
for us to all see, actually, the design review committee, and it was a DIY, as my kids would say. They really did a great job.
They did
Their
an
own-
excellent
did,
job.
yeah.
Their own
So
handbook, yeah.
The chair at the time.
It was Eric.
noth- yeah, nothing against-
Let's name names
Yeah,
so we're
nothing
not
against the-
praising somebody.
yeah. No, Eric, he just, took the,
did a
he
great
did it, he
job.
just did it, and it was a very
It's
well.
got links, so it's also active when it's on
Yeah.
online.
So I would like to have us at least work on this, have at one spot on the agenda a month, not every time, because we have other meetings, but this is a long-term project to codify everything and to make things work. So anyone who wants to submit text or ideas, please
I
send them
have
to
a
Brian.
historic one in my wonderful file, my
Please
super
do,
duper
if you've got
files.
it, and just bring it in,
Think
and
it was
Brian can
called
scan
the-
it.
Yeah.
And this brings me to our next subject, Dropbox. So, we've all gotten so Brian and I were working on getting some sort of shared storage space so that we could share documents in perpetuity.
Yeah.
So that they would be organized, and we could all go to them and see them. So, we had hoped to do it in one way, but it didn't pan out, so the town has a Dropbox.
You should have gotten some type of an email about setting up a
Bless you.
Dropbox account. Your email addresses have already been,
Oh, okay.
like, given permission,
So,
yeah.
so this is from Matt. He sent out email to your winchester.us addresses. Those are the emails you need to use for the Dropbox. Please register for it, because otherwise you will not be able to see anything that we put there. This allows you also to put documents there to share. So I realize this is a little extra work, but this allows us to, for instance, put documents there that ordinarily we would circulate or that you would lose, like for
Who's in
instance,
charge of organizing it?
It's only me.
yeah, so we have
You guys don't have permission.
No, that,
No, I just meant like who's
Yeah.
gonna do the whole file structure and.
Yeah.
Brian and I are gonna work that out, and, so it's all within our control.
great.
So that is, so please, respond, sign it up. No one has done that yet, so we need to get that done. The other thing is that you also got an email with a copy of the housing production
Yeah,
plan.
I read it.
And so here are paper copies for you.
Great, yeah, it's easier to mark it up.
And I don't have an extra one, which is great, because Heather von Maring's not here. So here's the thing, so there are going to be a number of points where we can provide input, but this document is going to be sent out for public comment in about a week and a half, 2
Yeah,
weeks?
after this initial review by the, well, hopefully by some of you.
Yeah.
And the working group, the HPP working group.
So,
It doesn't even say who did this.
well, it's
It's
broken
only,
out.
that's actually only a chapter, it's only a portion, starts on page 48.
sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so, well, read the whole thing. So this is coming out of,
43, actually.
MAPC is the contractor who's producing this document. They would like us to review it and get your comments in for this preliminary stage by next Monday.
Just this chapter?
Just that document in your hands. And the idea is, in this one, first of all, mark out all the things that you don't, the important thing on this one is remove the things that you think should not be in there, because it's going to go out for public comment, and only the things that are realistic, I guess, is that the right word?
No, she said that the things that you know that are definitely never going to happen here, erase those.
Okay.
But that's it.
That's it.
ADUs?
No, ADUs we're going to keep. ADUs we're going to keep.
The whole reason is to avoid even the one time that if something gets on there and it's just in the record forever, that someone's like, oh, I can't believe you even thought of this, so if you happen to feel very strongly, let them know.
Yeah, I mean, the idea is to make sure that everything that cuts out there is something that's worthy of discussion, that there isn't like this one red herring which will occupy, and it's something we are not going to do anyway, which is going to
Right, and then we're going to
occupy.
have to keep coming back to for the next
Right.
30 years.
So this is going out for public comment for 4 weeks, and then it's going to be, they will be digesting the comment, and then they will be sending it to the boards the last week of September, I believe, or earlier than that maybe, and then we're going to have another bite at it, and then it's going to go before both the select board and the planning board for approval on October the 9th, which is a
That's
joint
correct.
meeting. And even then, I believe there's still time to tweak it. This final thing is going to be submitted to DHCP by, DHCP or D?
DHCD.
DHCD, by the beginning of November. Did I get that right? So this process is still ongoing. There will be time for more and more.
Basically,
Comment.
probably 3 more reviews,
Yeah.
so there's not gonna be any
So I
shortage.
did read all you sent us, thank you. It was good to get it, the 81 pages. Is there a reason why we didn't get the rest in print?
Oh, no, because the only reason, that wasn't even meant for us, so that was meant for the HPP working group that were left over.
Yeah, these
Exactly.
are leftovers. I apologize, they're leftovers from the
I
HPP
have
working
this
group.
general view of all my volunteer time, the town can print stuff for me when it's this
Yeah.
long. I would love pages 1 through 42, because I would mark some of that stuff.
Okay.
So I guess I can't swing by tomorrow, but I could,
Well,
or maybe
Brian-
they could go
Well,
in the
they also
packets.
really are not into, like, us marking up paper copies unless we're gonna scan them in and send it to
We'll have
them.
to scan them
How
in
do we
and
get
send.
your comments to you with, I want to read it, I read it on
So,
my
yeah, I mean.
iPad, but I would
The,
really
the,
like.
the real problem is Brian is leaving for vacation this evening.
Oh,
So getting a hard copy on the town's dime.
Suzanne can do it.
Yeah.
Y'all email.
So Suzanne has this document?
I can certainly email it to her.
Okay, if you could email it to her, and how many people want a hard copy of it? This is for the full,
Oh, yeah, please.
But
so,
we're only reviewing what you handed me.
I'm sorry, we're reviewing, are we reviewing the
really
whole
all of
thing? We can review the whole thing.
You can review, so we basically, right now, we have a kind of a deadline on Monday, August 6th, from the HPP working group and planning board and select board. If you're gonna have any comments on this first bite,
I did.
and it would be the entire document. If you want any comments on this first bite, you gotta give it to me by close of business Monday.
I'm gonna trust Maureen to catch everything I would have.
What would we do without Maureen? Well, let's, so why don't we do this? Why
I'm
don't-
not talking about editing, though, I'm actually talking about stuff like really.
So why don't we ask,
A lot of it was tone.
so Betsy, you'd like a hard copy?
Yes, please.
Okay, Maureen, you'd like a hard
Yes,
copy?
please.
And I think I would like a hard copy, and Heather, would you like
I
a?
will not be making it before Monday.
Okay, and Heather Von Mering, I don't know when she gets back from
On
her.
Friday morning.
Well, she's got an electronic copy, so why don't can you ask Suzanne to make 3 copies available? And then,
Does she want us to pick them up?
that
I would
be
imagine
best.
you would have to pick them
I
up.
think
That's
that,
fine. That's
If
fine.
she does it tomorrow, I'll pick it up on Thursday.
That's fine.
Yeah,
I
let's
get-
just
I
say-
get- I get down here often enough.
If she could make them available Thursday morning, that would be fine. And that we would all just go to engineering and pick her
Yep.
up from her engineering.
Hey, 3 copy, 4
Sure,
copies? 4
this is your
copies.
chance, isn't it?
I
3 copies.
don't have
3
any
copies.
capacity.
3 copies. And you've run out of throat
I'm very
lozenges.
busy at work.
Okay, so, and I understand this is sort of coming out of nowhere, but it came out of nowhere for the working
But you
group
have
as
2
well.
kids, nobody else does. Do they take any time?
I have a recalcitrant cat that won't let me pill him.
Recalcitrant what?
Cat,
Oh.
yes.
Cats,
Sherry's-
oh, cats
Sherry's
are
the cat.
very easy.
This
Cats
cat-
are simple.
You should meet my cat. Cats are simple until you have to give them their antihypertensive medication and
Oh,
they run
yeah,
away from you.
I remember that.
And they're like,
Or like put them in a crate. Oh.
this cat's really good at he's slippery as you wouldn't.
So
believe.
you're,
Anyway, so those are the two, so now
so we're picking up Thursday.
So
And then I was asking if I could sit on, or if we can work, I don't know who, and this is just to create some sort of a group. And anybody who's wanting to participate is welcome. If we ended up with 3, we'd have to post it, but it's like open season. But with some of the members of the select board, some of us are trying to figure out what vehicle the town can use to deal with private property. And I'm not talking about eminent domain, I'm just talking about transactions that other communities do when they see development opportunities, because this town has been frozen.
Yeah, well, that's
And,
what I was. well, that's
There
what-
are vehicles that are legal for setting up different types of corporations,
I mean,
so.
right, exactly, well, if you had an edict, you would be
Somerville
able to jump on that, but.
They presented us at conference on how they buy up the triple deckers.
We were talking about edicts back in, holy moly, back when I was on the board of selectmen.
That's a
so
different
it's-
concept, but they're related, it's related, they're
But-
they're both,
it's a fund structure that-
any and all, but we just need to get going.
Well,
So,
You've already begun the conversation with Mike Betancourt,
Right.
and is this something that we want to, well, we need to do it with the select board.
Yeah,
So the
absolutely.
question is, who gets to take the first stance step? Are we waiting for them? Are we gonna?
no, it's we talk, we all talk. right?
Okay, well,
They're
then-
friendly.
then we should-
We're working real well together.
Yeah, no, I mean, that we need to set up a meeting, obviously.
Yeah. So I
So-
guess the question I have is if, if you guys want me to make the next phone call, I will. If
I can-
Deb wants to.
I can certainly make the phone call.
make the
I
phone
didn't,
call.
I
It would
didn't,
be better coming from the.
so,
I'm fine with it.
Mike said he would be
But either
speaking
way,
with
we need-
Lance. I can
Right.
certainly talk to Lance,
Please.
and we'll figure out where to go next
Right,
with that.
and who participates, to me, though, it's as many of us as want to, and it could be totally posted meetings that happen at 5
Oh, yeah.
o'clock, or 8:15
8:15.
a.m., whatever works for the people who are willing to put some
Yeah.
time into it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I will speak with Lance about that. I was going to say something else, and I've already forgotten. We have, so as Brian is going to be out for the rest of the week,
Just the rest of the week, yeah.
I'm in charge of getting the next week's agenda to Suzanne.
Okay.
So,
I'm gonna do tear downs.
Terry-Ann's already on there.
Okay.
So we have Dennis Carlone, who's our urban designer that we've hired to help us look at various projects in the past. He had an enormous amount of effort that he put into the CBD guidelines, so we've worked with him well. He's going to come and talk to us about the FAR issues that we're having downtown, one of the...
Perfect.
So, and then,
Anything else while we have him?
well, we're going to
Yeah.
be talking about dormers,
I think the
apparently.
dormer, I don't
We're
think
gonna
we
I
have
have
want to
dormers.
something else out, because we, from time to time, do have this, I don't know what else to call it, opportunity, I love that word, to bring in 53G for design review. And I think we want to talk to him about just ongoing, how to retain him, for, whether through us or through the ZBA, for projects. And I think that's a big
I think
project that
we should discuss that with him. I would really like to have more than just one person we go to, just
I agree.
so that we get a
But he
different
may also have
perspective.
a recommendation, because I
Sure.
really think he's been very successful, as far as I'm concerned, within this group and within the broader vision.
He, does he have his own firm still?
Yeah.
Yes.
He does,
No, there's,
yeah.
yeah, it's him.
Yeah, he's,
Yeah, he has a back office as well, but doesn't do much.
Mostly.
He does a little
He's
bit
at
of work.
Cambridge, he
He's on
got
Cambridge
himself
City
elected to the Cambridge City Council.
so he does a lot of city council.
But
We
he's
did-
Doing that
He was
after-
both an architect and.
He
a
actually,
design.
yeah, we hired him to help us understand
remember.
Highland Ave property to see what could possibly go in there. And we actually had a pretty reasonable other person who came in, and so we had two responses to that RFP, so we might want to reach out.
Piece I like about Dennis, that's why I'm
Yeah.
not saying no to the other person either, but that the other person seemed good, but Dennis has a really strong, first of all, he's not a spring chicken, with all due respect to the spring chickens, but he's been around the block a few times, and some of this, well, I mean, it really makes a difference when you've seen, as he has, that it takes
The
20
breadth.
years to do something.
Yeah.
And he worked a lot on the development in East Cambridge, like the Leechmere, that whole development, the park, the waterfront, I mean, that whole water, that channel, the canal, it's all, I mean,
All
he
his
was,
work.
yeah, and
Yeah.
Betsy and I were on the board when we went for a little hike and saw it, but it's that long view, and he's shown us slides of what it
He's-
looked like before it was ever
it's unbelievable.
developed.
I mean, he's definitely well qualified, but I mean, I think we need to just bring in another voice.
Oh, I agree. I'm not
And if that other
disagreeing.
voice doesn't work, then that other
Right.
voice doesn't work, but we should,
But he did work with a big firm, and I'm
please put on
struggling
your
to
action
remember the
items or
name.
note that we
I
want
just-
to talk about retaining 53G consultants, including Dennis and the other dude whose name escapes me.
Other dude.
Just as a general,
Just
But the other
general,
dude's not a
as
spring
an,
chicken.
as an agenda item?
Hasn't
no, as an action item.
been involved in
Sorry.
government the way.
Just to
it's-
remind me and you to,
That
we
he
want to
had
talk to
such
it
a-
about, Maureen would like us to discuss it with
Dennis.
Dennis, but I think maybe we should go home.
Yes.
He won't be offended by
No,
that.
no, no, I just want
Yes,
to, we can ask him, but I think we need to, we have to understand the framework for which we're going to start
Right.
using it, so. Okay, so those are the action items. I will send
Good.
out the draft agenda this, probably tomorrow, not this evening, and so please,
One more. When we do the tear down topic, though, I would love to have some material instead of just
I
chatting.
was gonna ask that, like,
Yeah.
what are we
What-
talking
what-
about?
what
Like,
material do we
talking
wanna
about,
have?
Like data, or what are we?
well, Brian is only going to be out until Monday, so he doesn't have a lot of time to. put-
Right, but I would say it probably won't take a lot of time. I would start with Lexington.
But what about tear downs? What is the?
How has Lexington dealt with it? 'Cause
Okay.
they,
Like,
so-
how are people
so-
preventing them, maybe?
So why don't,
We've made some
Can I,
efforts. to do
so
it.
that we get out of here, so why don't I make this suggestion? I'll send out the agenda tomorrow morning. Please send me things that you would like on the agenda, or what additional information you would like for any of those things on the agenda. And then, and I also want to point out that Brian has an annual review coming up. And so I would love to get that done on April the 15th, is that?
How
April?
does that work?
August?
August?
August
What,
15th.
what,
What is
what,
the process?
the process is, for, and I've only been here only a couple of years, so the long-timers can let me know where I get it wrong, is that we're going to be circulating there's a standard form which is used by the town to evaluate employees, and so I will be circulating a blank version of that to everyone.
include the job description.
It will include the job description, and then there's also a list of Brian's accomplishments for last year and goals for next year, and that is a document which hasn't been produced yet.
That
So
he provides you with?
Brian and
every
I,
budget season, so I have previous, I sent you the most
you
recent.
sent me the most, so, but
Yeah.
that's something that you and I will work with next week to make sure that we have all of your
They're
past.
all aligned,
That they're all aligned and that I don't miss anything and that you don't miss anything. So what I'll do is I'll send out the forms that we have now, and then when Brian and I get together and produce this list of accomplishments and goals for 2019, that will go out. And then we will have a discussion on August the
Session on same.
on same in executive session on the 15th.
Related to that, at some point, I think it'd be nice to have an agenda item about staffing, like if he could have.
Why are we laughing?
We just got out of a meeting.
This was a,
Most of the
laughing with you, not at you.
Heather, I'm looking, you're the spring chicken, I love you. I totally think
We
you're
just came out
fabulous.
of the Housing Production Plan Working Group thinking that maybe we should put some taxes on tear downs, on demolitions of using the fund a housing plan.
Yeah.
That's
Not a
exactly
tax.
what we were
but-
talking
Yeah,
about.
but we always talk about getting more money. So yes, that's just,
But I mean, with an actual plan, like this is the kind of staff we would want, these are the,
This is what we would,
this
this,
is the salary,
Wait,
this
wait,
is
we
the
talked about that.
qualification.
we will do, yes, that is an excellent
I mean,
idea.
it's different to have like a job description.
You see who's sitting there? There was a prior person who was part-time. That prior person didn't even have an office. There've been about 3 job descriptions. I'm the veteran of the whole thing, so I know.
Saying this is the
No,
done,
I
I say, like, moving forward.
No, I
Yes,
agree.
so please.
But that's why we're laughing.
I
It's
mean,
like,
other
that's why
towns,
we're-
I'm not
Heather,
laughing about Arlington has like 7 people.
you're right. Brookline has 11.
Email me
I couldn't.
and Brian saying you'd like to put this on the agenda. The way to get this,
no one had a motion to close the meeting,
yes,
so we're
yes.
still open.
We're still open, people, so if we could, do I get a motion to adjourn?
adjourn.
Betsy moves to adjourn, Maureen seconds, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. So again, Heather.